A lady with blonde hair is consoling herself with other men, after which someone enters the room. This man addresses Her Majesty, and the girl turns to him with interest. How dare he disturb her? It turns out it was Empress Ranch Julia Domina Barrios. The woman notices that it's Justo, the captain of the personal security detail. The girl then smirks and claims she can hardly believe he came to have fun with her. And if this is the case, the woman wonders if this is really cheating, after which she starts laughing out loud. She turns to Justo again and orders him to answer immediately, because she will not ask twice why he came. The boy tells Her Majesty that she's gone too far, but the girl compliments him and asks if she's really gone too far. It's so funny, and it seems the boy has grown bolder. She didn't think he'd come back and bite the hand that fed him. A week ago, the Empress issued a decree on mass executions, and on that day, Justo decided to sever all emotional ties with her. He destroyed not only his loyalty, and now he accuses her, clutching his sword tightly. The Empress he believed in and followed wasn't so cruel. She was an aristocrat, a strong woman, and also the remarkable man with whom he fought side by side. However, change is as inevitable as the changing seasons. The only thing she had left was not nobility, but rudeness, so he could not look at it anymore. Now the guy is crossing blades with his mistress, but the girl just smirks. After which the lady pushes him away. Another knight immediately turns excitedly to the captain of the guard and attacks the Empress. However, the main character punches him right in the face, sending him flying. The sound of weapons clashing could be heard for a long time afterward. With her weapon, that is, a butter knife, the lady mercilessly plunged the guards into eternal sleep, one after another. However, as the battle continued, the knight captain did not miss her moment of weakness. After all, the lady wasn't truly invincible, after which he defeated his mistress. The main character grabbed the guy's clothes and claimed he was a dirty traitor. She also swears that she will take revenge until the end of his days and will follow him until the very end. When the last breath escaped her lips, the top's dimming eyes were still open. This moment left a deep wound in Justo's heart, after which the boy closed Her Majesty's eyes and asked her to rest in peace. It was the year 270 by the imperial calendar. On September 14th, the conqueror of the continent, that is, the conquering Empress Julia Domina Barrios, met her end in a pool of ruby liquid. Meanwhile, another girl is at the table, drinking a strong drink. The lady says that this part seriously gives her goosebumps. This girl's name is Song Ha Dan. She is a 32-year-old woman whose greatest happiness is reading novels after work. Today, to relieve stress while reading, she drank wine, which allowed her to relax. A novel she loves so much, she's read it 3 times. It's the love story of an empress and the captain of her personal imperial guard, the ruler of the Rancia Empire, Julia Domina Barrios. Her husband's influence was so great that she became the first in history to unite the entire continent. Yet, endless wars eventually broke her. Julia lost her mind and turned into a merciless tyrant, and her closest person, that is, the captain of the personal imperial guard, started a rebellion. The girl's favorite part is when Julia meets her end at the hands of Justo. The girl says that useless and crazy people really do need to be gotten rid of. And even today she was with this director Lee. But at that very moment, the lady stops. And the investigators understand that the reason she enjoys this scene so much is director Lee. Even though he has so much power, he does not use it and spends all his time on useless nagging, so this evil has introduced us into the guise. The girl understands that she wants to be like Justo and would like to give up everything and leave the company. But memories of the loan prevent her from doing this, and the lady understands that she has no choice. After which, they think it doesn't matter at all, because she'll just drown all her problems in alcohol. After drinking, it's so easy to fall asleep, and after all, tomorrow is the day off. But a little while later, the lady is lying in a soft, comfortable bed, and when she wakes up, she realizes that she has a splitting headache. The girl also notices that her neck hurts and reaches for some water on the bedside table. But the main character doesn't notice from there that the bed is much larger. The lady looks around the entire room, and she realizes it looks just like a palace. While various guesses come to the girl's mind, she heads to the mirror. Seeing her reflection in shock, she realizes that this is Yulia Bledna. Her fair skin and blonde curls shine with their splendor. Her scarlet lips resemble a red liquid. The lady, in shock, grabs the mirror and realizes that this is impossible, because now she has become the villainous ruler of the ranch empire named Julia. The main character thinks how this happened and why she became the heroine of the novel. The lady also hopes that this is all a dream. When she pinches herself, she realizes that this is all reality. The girl understands that she is definitely not sleeping, and when she turns around, she sees some kind of rope. The lady thinks that this bell was previously used to call maids. If this is not a dream, then it means she has become Julia from the novel, and the most important thing for her now is to find out how much time is left before Yusto rises. In other words, she needs to find out what year it is in this world. Then the lady rings the bell, and the maid immediately enters the room and asks if Her Majesty called. The girl realizes that Yulia was put into eternal sleep on September 14th, after which the classic girl tells her what day it is. The maid replies that today is September 11th, and the 270th year since the founding of the empire, which shocks the main character. After all, there are only 3 days left until the uprising. A little while later, the lady sits on her bed and reflects on it all. She understands that no matter how much she looks, the room is exactly the same as described in the novel. She also doesn't understand how it happened, and the only thing she understood is that she became Julia from the novel. Well, what is more important is that there are only 3 days left for her to plunge into eternal sleep, and the lady is thinking what to do, because in a few days she will really go to the next world at the hands of Yusto. The lady understands that if everything happens according to the plot of the novel, then so it will be, but she does not want to plunge into eternal sleep for the sins of others. Therefore, we need to remember why Yusto tried to eliminate her and what Julia did. The girl understands that initially, Empress Julia Dominavarius was not a tyrant. She was once an exemplary empress, and as the years passed, she gained more and more allies. But the war began, and she was forced to abandon her ideal. She became intoxicated by war and superiority, and she desired more and more. The people were exhausted, and when the war finally ended, Yulia drowned herself in alcohol and men. And then, one of the aristocrats claimed that the place of the empress belongs to the ice. There are those who are eager to take it away. The girl asked the Duke of Fez what kind of creature dared to lick her throne, and the man replied that it was her former followers and those whom she had imprisoned. The lady asked what she should do, to which her interlocutor smiled, and he told Her Majesty that she had imprisoned them, but still had not taken care of the future by sending them into exile. After all, now they're thirsty for revenge, and he thinks it's time to finish what he started. If the lady agrees, he'll get to work immediately. It happened on September 9th, 270, and the girl claimed that all those who were against her were freaks who had been exiled or were sitting in the Tower of Exile, and therefore they were all sentenced to death. The girl organized mass executions, and the next day Yusta addressed Her Highness and said that all these people were devoted to her. Therefore, he asks that the order not be carried out. Julia's mind had long been clouded, but nevertheless, Yusto genuinely cared for her because he trusted her to the end. Well, at that time the women were only interested in the boy. Why he always came with sad news. He should stop talking about sad things and have a drink with her. If he doesn't want to, then let him leave. After all, she was busy, and looking at this, Yusta realized that the empress he followed was no longer alive, and he promised himself he would rise again. Now the main character realizes she remembered the plot, and that Yusto was in great pain back then. The girl understands that she can survive if she changes the plot, and to do this, she needs to prevent Julia's order from being carried out. But the main character also thinks that she can't just cancel the order, because not everything is so simple. Yusto tried to trust the empress until the end, and all because he had deep feelings that he did not dare to express. After he decided to rebel, he was tormented by the feelings of both a faithful servant and a man in love. The guy cut everything in his path to cut off all love for her until his hands turned scarlet. After the war, Julia lost her mind, and it took Justo 3 days to finally rise up. The girl sighs and realizes that she must have good reasons to cancel the execution. There must be enough reasons for Justo to forgive Julia. Their main character understands that the plot of the novel is very interesting. If you think about it, after the rebellion of Justo, the Duke of Fez denied all his connections with the Empress and directed all his energy to the restoration of the empire. Therefore, the girl is shocked to realize that all this can be prevented if she does not listen to the Duke. So one can accuse him of treason and of having deceived Julia into issuing the order. The Duke of Fez knew that if Julia found out about his actions, he would lose his head. But after all, there is evidence of what Fez was trying to hide. A little while later, the maid comes into the room and asks if her mistress called her. The main character understands that the evidence is in the hands of those who know about the conspiracy and tells the maid to prepare everything because she will be going to the Tower of Exile. The maid is surprised by this, but the Empress insists she thinks there's something to see there. The lady believes she'll meet with those who have evidence of the Duke's treason and will do everything to ensure Justo leaves her alive. At this time, someone turns to Duke Marcus and asks why they can't start all over now that the Wind Knights are on their side. At this time, the guy thinks about Her Majesty and understands that he swore allegiance to her. But now he refuses his oath and claims that in 3 days they will execute the Empress and the Duke of Fez. He will stop the Lane's empire. The boy realizes he's done it and the process has begun. If this happens, even the strongest emperor won't be able to handle this wave. Justo says the Empress's execution isn't the end of it. All bribe takers, including Fez, will also be beheaded, and those framed and exiled will be freed. And the guy understands that this is not the most difficult thing. And when he takes off his glove, he thinks that the most difficult thing is with his own hand. Plunge the Empress into eternal sleep. The boy immediately begins to feel sad and think about his mistress. But at that very moment, someone bursts into the room and shouts that he has urgent news with a fever in his face and went to the Tower of Exile. At this time, the main character heads to the tower and understands that everyone who sits in it must be on her side. There is a great wizard named Felix and a prime minister named Cyril Benes. She needed their support to survive. This place was disorienting with its sudden changes in weather. On the same sunny day, the sky can suddenly be covered by thunderclouds, and sometimes it feels like the seasons are divided into 2 parts, half autumn and half summer. This tower once belonged to a magician. This mage conducted extensive experiments mixing different kalimaths and, as a result, disrupted the entire sequence of the seasons. Eventually, prisoners were kept in the tower. Thus, the Duke of Fez, one of the wisest and most competent men, gathered together a large number of imperial allies, and he locked them in the Tower of Time. Julia, intoxicated by a life of debauchery and having lost her mind, easily fell for the Duke's lies. But she realized that this would lead to her plunging into eternal sleep and ordered a mass execution. Thus began the rebellion against Julia. The Duke of Fez knew that if she found out about his lie, he would be in trouble. When the Empress left for the front, then she appointed him as the head of the empire's affairs, and after a long war, Julia began to seek solace in alcohol and other substances. Meanwhile, the Duke issued forged orders and wielded the Empress's power as if it belonged to him. Now the girl approaches the tower, and the knights immediately kneel and greet Her Majesty, the ruler of the empire. The girl tells them to get up and asks where those who were recently locked in the tower are. One of the servants replies that everyone is on the 4th floor, and the girl says to be taken there. The protagonist realizes that it's so warm on the 4th floor that it's not like outside. She also thinks Felix used magic, as stated in the novel. When the main character approaches one of the cells, she asks who is there, and also realizes that Julia initially gave the order for expulsion. But the Duke of Fez caught these people and locked them in a tower. When all these people see the lady, they are surprised, and at this time, the main character sees Felix and wonders why he is there. One of the servants replies that he appeared there recently and the order for his execution has not yet been given. The young man at that moment raises his head and wonders if this is Her Majesty. The main character realizes that this is Commander Felix, a boy who was destined to become a great magician in the near future. As a child, he was persecuted for his talent for magic, but later he met Julia during the war. The boy who managed to get out of the city alive wanted to follow her. He claimed that he knew how to use magic, and if Her Majesty took him with her, he would be faithful to her and would never harm Her Majesty. After this, the girl said that even if the boy became a great magician, he still would not be able to hurt her. If the boy wants to follow her, he can become her servant, to which he smiled. The boy swears allegiance to the one who first showed him kindness, and Felix could not hate her even after being plunged into the emperor's eternal sleep, because it was Julia who gave him a chance at a new life. The boy was quite cruel by nature, and the reason for this lay in his difficult childhood. At this time, the girl wonders if Felix really thought that she didn't know about his abilities. After this, the guy claims that he knows that he shouldn't say that because he is now a criminal. Well, after all, he cannot stand aside when he sees the situation in which the common people find themselves. And even being locked there, he still hopes that the lady will come to her senses and be more lenient towards them. The lady tells him to calm down, because she didn't come there to punish them. Julia realizes that, as she thought, the Empress's entire assumption was just a sophism. The woman says that her first order was to expel the guilty, and the second was execution, but they are not afraid of being plunged into eternal sleep. The burden of responsibility for things not going as planned also falls on her. So she'll let them go. The girl understands that even if she starts speaking arrogantly, she'll openly express her superiority. They won't even present anything in response, and the lady claims that she knows that there are those who no longer want to stay on her side. So she gives her word that they will not be punished even if they leave. And in the name of Empress Julia Domina Varius, she frees them all. At this point, someone addresses Her Majesty. The girl understands that demanding an answer from them right now will only make matters worse. She has no choice but to put on a mask and continue playing the role of Julia. But when she comes out, she says that if anyone decides to stay with her, then let them come to the imperial palace tomorrow morning. Then the girl closes the door, her mind begging Felix to come. The main character sighs heavily, and she understands that the next person she must meet will be more problematic than Felix, so the lady says to be taken to Count Bennis. When a lady climbs the stairs, she realizes that the higher she goes, the colder it is. At the same moment, the main character hears someone addressing her in a trembling voice, and when the lady turns around, she sees that the servants are all frozen. Julia realizes that she forgot that they are not as strong as the Empress, and says that they can wait for her there. There's a matter she wants to discuss with the Count in private. The servant turns to his colleague, and she whispers and asks if she thinks that Her Majesty is behaving strangely, and replies that she thinks so too. A little while later, the main character finds herself in front of a door and is wondering how to open it. When the girl takes hold of the handle, she begins to open it and realizes that it turned out to be easier than she thought. She felt like she'd walked into a freezer. The game's off-screen character looked scared or confused. Even during the execution itself, he remained steadfast until his last breath. At this time, the man asks whether Her Majesty needs anything or whether she has come such a difficult way. Just to see the sinner. After which he asks why Her Majesty is there. The girl replies that she came to deliver an order. The Count wonders if this is a personal order for a sinner. To which the lady replies that this is true, and he has already done it once, so it will be easier the second time. The girl also turns to Cyril Bennis and says that he was the one who brought the accusations against the Duke of Fez. The lady understands that the dice have been thrown, and the future that awaits them depends only on his choice. The guy at this time turns to Her Majesty. But at the same moment, they hear someone burst into the room. The main character wonders if this is Yusto, after which he begins to wonder if something like this was in the novel. The girl also wonders how she could not notice his black as night hair, which symbolizes nobility and green eyes. Thanks to training, he has a firm and toned body. If Yusto is compared to the emperor, his body will be much better, but now the main character is wondering what he is doing there. And is it really because she arrived at the tower that the lady is even thinking about what to say to her? Then he asks why the boy is there. Diamond replies that it's because Her Majesty arrived unaccompanied. But the main character realizes this is complete nonsense. First and foremost, Yulia is someone who doesn't need an escort. So he's worried not about her but about Count Benes, and he came there for him. Justo's story doesn't inspire confidence. And to prevent betrayal, she must show him another version of herself. The girl immediately turns to Justo Marcus, and he wonders what's going on, because she doesn't remember the moment when she called him there. Well, the guy claims that he is guarding Her Majesty, and the main character asks if that is really true. After which, she suggests to the guy to stop, because he will never take her place, which makes him angry. He also clenches his fists and asks Her Majesty if the execution will take place. Yulia understands what it means he doesn't trust her. However, the cruel Julia is no longer there, and the girl wonders if he came there to ask her about it without her permission. The lady understands that this guy rebelled against Julia and plunged her into eternal sleep, so now he is nobody to her. Now she's Julia and must drive him away. At that very moment, someone else turns to Duke Marcus, and he says that whoever he is, such behavior in the presence of Her Majesty is unacceptable. The commander of the knights turns to Count Benes in surprise, but he says that he is not too happy about it either. That the guy came there and tried to put on airs, and besides, he's not the only one who can be alone with Her Majesty. After this, the guy once again turns to the Count, who says that if Her Majesty intended to plunge him into eternal sleep, then she would certainly have taken her sword with her. The main character realizes this is true, and the canonical Julia always carried a sword with her wherever she went. Because there were many enemies everywhere, and the girl understands that in any case, she had a reason to drive Yusto out of there. The lady immediately turns to the young man and asks if he was afraid she would put the Count into eternal sleep. If he truly dared to doubt his mistress, he better leave. So let him go away. The guy only bows after that, and the main character, looking at his face, she thinks, "What the hell is this?" The girl also realizes that she can't hear any footsteps outside the door, and wonders if he's really going to wait for her. Yulia understands that she can't do anything about this, after which she invites the Count to continue their conversation. At this time, the guy wonders if Her Majesty no longer believes in Duke Marcus, to which the lady replies that he is right, and the man asks if she noticed his facial expression at that moment. At this time, the girl thinks how good it is that Julia is the type who can always maintain a mask of composure regardless of the situation. Because her real face almost always expresses confusion at such moments. Count Benes is the main target in the mission to save people from the rebels. In the novel, it was written that Justo led the uprising. But what if Count Benes was actually the head of the operation? The girl wonders if he suspects something, and then why he's silent. In any case, as soon as she turns her back, the knife inevitably plunges into her. The lady also says that she thinks he mistakenly formed the impression of her as a tyrant who loved a dissolute life. What girl is interested in whether he wants to know? In this case, whether she did it on purpose. The man is surprised by this, but then smiles and says that he has some dirt on the Duke of Fez. A little while later, the girl heads to the bed, and when she falls on it, she realizes that she is very tired. The body feels like it's not hers, although the lady understands that it's not hers anyway. The only joy after becoming Julia. This allows her to send away the maid and be alone. The girl also realizes that Count Barrius is truly an amazing man. He hails from another country, so he's unlike other aristocrats. He also helped her obtain some information to incriminate the Duke of Fez. That's why the main character understands how brave he is. The Duke of Fez's power was so great that he had the audacity to plant his people and spy on the Empress. Count Bennis used to be the same as the Duke of Fez, but now he decided to change. The girl understands that she was really nervous, but still held up well. To be honest, it was difficult. The Count said that, to tell the truth, her words didn't convince him. Yulia asked if this was true, and the man replied that, in his opinion, it was very ineffective. The girl replied that she had been a tyrant on purpose all this time in order to collect evidence against the Duke of Fez. Well, her interlocutor replies that he cannot yet fully trust her. Their main character wonders if he really doesn't believe her. She also understands that this is normal, given what Yulia did. Perhaps her actions were too impulsive for him. Or perhaps he has his own plan for the Duke of Fez. The Count, meanwhile, turns to Her Majesty and asserts that he will tell her so. The Duke of Fez is a sinner, and he will still fall into eternal sleep and terrible torment. Therefore, to plunge him into eternal sleep, or to leave this decision to Her Majesty. But for either of them, he will not be grateful to her. Julia is shocked and wonders what he is talking about, because she wanted to hear that he would be grateful to Her Majesty until the end of his days. The lady wonders why he didn't answer like that, and whether he really said that for safety's sake. At this time, the Count once again turns to Her Majesty and claims that he knows what she needs. That's why she wanted to use him, and he will think about her proposal. As long as their opinions align, the lady will be able to use him. After which, the guy kept saying that he hoped she wouldn't want his devotion. Now the main character is lying in bed and thinking about what else she could expect from this world. She'll only have a working relationship with him anyway. Just because he's not loyal doesn't mean he'll betray her. And in any case, after falling into Julia's eternal sleep, he worked for the good of the country. And loyalty is a burdensome thing. But it would still be better to draw up an employment contract, since the guy could be suitable for the role of a partner or colleague. But the lady realizes she needs to get some sleep first. A little while later, she hears cautious movements and realizes it's not one or two people. She also hopes that among them are the people she freed from the tower. After which, the girl excitedly rings the bell, and a maid enters the room. She turns to Her Majesty and asks if she is awake, to which the girl replies that she is. Julia understands that, unlike yesterday's maid, she speaks kindly and calmly. These are children who are not sure that their tyrant ruler has changed. But having returned by faith in her words from yesterday, she feels how strongly they are attached to Julia. When the lady looks at the maids, she realizes that it seems they are still afraid of her. But she's nonetheless grateful that they came. But when the main character looks at all the servants, she realizes that this can't be true. And why isn't Felix here? The lady believed Felix would come even if the others didn't. But at that very moment, one of the maids tells Her Majesty that Felix is waiting for her outside the door. And this is all because Her Majesty is not yet prepared, to which the main character replies that yes. And the maid asks if she can start preparing her, to which the lady agrees. Well, at that very moment, the girl smells something and turns to Flenna. And she also thanks her because she remembers that she likes these flowers. Julia understands that it's a refreshing citrus scent. After Julia praised the smell, they began to prepare the water using these flowers. These flowers are harvested every spring and bloom, releasing a wonderful fragrance. To prevent Julia from developing an allergy, they were carefully checked, just so that Julia would be happy. However, after that, the girl became a tyrant. She no longer liked the scent of flowers, and the maid was probably afraid to perform her duties today. She must have been hesitant to use those flowers again, so she was shocked by Togo. The maid paid so much attention to little things for Yulia's sake, and now the girl is ready to burst into tears. She also hates Julia because she couldn't even give her a short compliment. A little while later, the maid finishes her work and, looking at her mistress, says that everything is ready. The main character looks at them with a smile on her face, after which one of the maids says that she will call Felix. When the girl leaves, she also thanks Her Majesty with tears in her eyes, and the main character mentally congratulates them on their return. At that moment, Felix enters the room and addresses Her Majesty. The girl says that he has come too. But at the same moment, he sees tears in the guy's eyes and asks if he's okay. The young man replies that yes, and apologizes because everyone says that Her Majesty has become her former self. That's why he's so happy. The girl realizes the rumors must have started this morning. And the guy at that very moment asks Her Majesty, "What is it?" To which the lady replies that it is all because he returned. The lady thinks that it is a little strange to say this so openly, but it is true, because without them she will not be able to survive in this world. At this time, the guy tells Her Majesty that if she orders, he will follow her. Julia understands that such words are a little embarrassing, and it is quite pleasant to hear this from Felix. At that very moment, the lady hears someone else screaming outside the door. The maid tells the Duke that Her Majesty is currently busy. But the man only pushes her away and asks how the maid dares to prevent him from meeting with Her Majesty. The man immediately enters the Empress's room, and the main character understands that in this world she must get rid of him first and foremost. The main character also understands that he is the biggest problem there, and that he is her enemy, which is just one step away from the wooden door. In the novel, it was because of him that Julia was plunged into eternal sleep. And he is her enemy. At this time, a man comes to Her Majesty and asks her to stop using mana. The girl looks at her hand and realizes she's released mana. She must have lost it when she heard the Duke. The girl immediately smiles and claims that it's just morning practice and asks what his reaction is. And did he really think she was going to put him into eternal sleep? The man replies that of course not. Her Majesty would never do such a thing. Julia understands that even a cough can't hide the tremor in his voice. She would gladly get rid of him now, but she can't do this because of Cyril Bennis. She shouldn't accidentally do something so stupid because she needs to get the guy on her side. The Duke at that moment cries out to Her Majesty and asks why she forgave these traitors. But the main character wonders if something is wrong, to which the man replies that they were rude to her. And didn't he say that they want to take her place? To which the lady replies that it was like that, but wonders if she is obliged to listen to him. Julia also asks him if he feels like he's become a burden. She released them from the Tower of Exile and has no intention of sending them back, after which she asks if he understands her. At the moment, there are 3 people ruling the empire: the Duke of Fez, who is a representative of the nobility, the tyrant Empress Julia, and the army under Justo. This army never thirsted for power or war. But because of Julia's corruption and the Duke of Fez's interference, they had to. No one could tolerate the cruelty of these two. And the lady wonders, what if one night Julia attacks the Duke of Fez? She thinks that at first this would make many people happy. But then they would start to wonder why she was doing this. And while they are so openly feuding, there will be those who will wait for the knights to resolve this problem. The rest will follow Count Bennis's advice to stop them. The lady's goal is to support Count Bennis's opinion. This will make it easier to uncover the truth about the Duke of Fez. Now the main character asks if the Duke understood her, to which he replies that he did. And then he keeps saying that he simply didn't know that Her Majesty herself violated her own order. Julia asks if he wants anything else, and the man replies that he was only thinking about the well-being of Her Majesty. To those who betrayed the Empress, how could he allow them to stay near her? The main character is irritated, thinking how convincing this is and how very insidious it is on his part. The Duke of Fez despised the Empress behind her back, but in front of her he was always like a devoted dog. The more he has, the more valuable his life is. And the man understood that he had to close his mouth and appear before the Empress. Otherwise, he would fall into eternal sleep. The Duke also knew he could get what he wanted and was confident of it: alcohol and other substances. And also handsome men. He did all this in order to gain the power of the Empress. The man claimed that he had done a lot for Her Highness and was interested in developing gratitude. She could not listen to just one request. The lady thinks how shamelessly he acted and this man is too similar to her previous director, so she doesn't like it. And yet, it is possible to find differences, so the main character wonders if this is why he acted so recklessly. Julia understands that she is giving orders there, and while the Duke is surprised, he asks what she is talking about. The lady then claims that he just violated her order, after which she asks if he wants to say that he did everything according to his preferences. The man replies that yes, after which he tries to say something else, but the lady says that of course, since he so easily sends her confidants to execution. She is plotting something, but the man replies that this is not so and asks how a lady can doubt his fidelity. He's been with Her Majesty for so long, but the girl replies that liars have long tongues. The Duke turns to Her Highness again, and she understands that when it comes to this person, she quickly loses her temper and, fortunately, last time everything worked out. If you think about it, she wasn't tired when she climbed the tower and easily opened the frozen door. This means that she has Julia's power, and in the end, what can they do to her? After all, in her opinion, no one except Yusto is capable of harming her, and in the end, she has nothing to fear. The lady rises from her seat and says that if the Duke is really so worried about her, then let her review all the information and data in the documents. She shouldn't notice a single error. At this time, the man loses the power of speech, and the main character understands that these are the words that the director from her past life spoke to her. No matter how well the Duke prepared himself, upon hearing such words, he would naturally become nervous. Well, if he shave his words well and pulls out a trump card, he can win this game. The ladies at this time turn to the Duke of Fez and ask why he doesn't take a rest today. Yulia understands that she will return him from his own work and claims that she will do the rest herself. After all, isn't it her duty? So he can go. The man immediately becomes nervous and cries out that Her Majesty doesn't dare do such a thing. To which the girl sternly replies that no, and she dares. The lady also wonders if he dares disobey the Empress's order. If this is so, then it is better for him to repent there and now, because he will not be able to avoid punishment. The lady sits back down and says that if he doesn't agree, he should try to challenge her decision, but she won't back down either. The man immediately falls to the floor in fear and asks Her Majesty if he dares to do such a thing. The girl looks at him coldly, after which the Duke immediately falls to the ground. And she says that her humble servant was too presumptuous. The man also wonders when the lady managed to return to her former state. Is it really true that the dosage of the medicine was insufficient, so it needs to be stopped right now? The main character at this time smiles and says that the tavern is her most devoted subordinate. The Duke answers Her Majesty that everything is exactly so. This humble servant has always been devoted only to her. Yulia says she's sure this is true, as she was only teasing him a little. The girl understands that he cannot even understand her true intentions, and claims that, by the way, how could such a diligent servant be satisfied with just one day off? After all, she has a small gift for him, and she gives him 3 days to completely rest and relax. The girl understands that it seems this fool has not figured out anything, and where are his vaunted mental abilities? The lady also understands that, in any case, he began to manage the country's affairs completely by accident. Due to the fact that the previous Duke of Fez fell into eternal sleep without leaving an heir, his place was taken by his closest relative. So the girl can't believe she allowed this to happen in the past, even though it happened during the war. And yet, she needs to finish all the preparations while he's resting. The lady also tells the Duke that she has never ruled a country without his help before, and he knows this well. The man says, "What is this?" After all, her humble servant will come running as soon as she calls. The main character replies that this one is faithful, and he is really very devoted. After which, the lady turns around, and the man addresses Her Highness once again. As the girl moves on, she thinks how annoying it is that she has to play dumb in front of him. The lady also realizes that it seems she has been in his company for too long, after which she sighs. The girl realizes she doesn't even have time to be angry now. First and foremost, she needs to find out everything the Duke of Fez has been up to and try to eliminate all the consequences. The lady turns to Flenna and tells her to take the maids. And she also brought her absolutely all the documents from the Duke of Fez's office. The maid answers Her Majesty and says that she listens to the lady and says that of course, let her do it under the appropriate pretext. The lady replies that of course, and the main character understands that while thinking about what happened. She feels guilty towards them for not being the Julia to whom they are so devoted, and also because her body was occupied by her. And this is the reason why she should work harder. The lady also turns to Felix, and the guy immediately responds, and the main character wonders what kind of unprecedented force makes this 17-year-old boy so charming. Yulia realized she couldn't look at him. The curly-haired boy's eyes always sparkled with happiness when he saw Yulia. For fear of becoming hated by the girl, he always tried to maintain his image as an innocent child. Of course, all this was only in the presence of Julia, but this is far from being because he could become a great wizard. Near Julia, Felix was always like an innocent lamb. And besides, because of this behavior, the servants thought that he was just a cute child. However, if you tear off this mask, you can see one of the most ruthless people. For example, a guy ruined the life of one nobleman just because he dared to speak out against Julia. He became his worst nightmare, and after only a week, this man was bowing before Her Majesty. And he claimed he had made a mistake. Felix saw the apologetic nobleman. With a smile on his face, he said that he finally understood the Empress's greatness. The guy said this with an angelic smile on his face. The girl also thinks that, thank the gods that he's so kind to Julia. Even though he's the Empress's personal servant, he should still be punished for the harm he caused to the aristocrat. But no one dared to bring charges against him out of fear. And moreover, Yulia always knew about it but preferred to pretend she didn't know. The guy so sweetly pretends he had nothing to do with what he did. And there are no accusations against him. The girl approaches Felix and says there's something she wants him to do. The guy replies that he'll do whatever the lady orders. The lady tells him to start by keeping an eye on the Duke of Fez and limiting his ability to contact the outside world. The guy replies that it will be easy, and the main character says that of course she will do it so that he won't notice. The young man agrees to this, and a little while later he is already casting a magic circle. The girl wonders if this is the pen that Julia gave him, and the guy is still such a baby. The lady approaches Felix and states that she wants to ask him something, to which the guy replies that, of course, and asks whatever she wants. The main character says that the climate in the tower is extremely unstable and wonders if it will return to normal. Uncle also sadly says that some people are still there because of the Duke of Fez. She must visit them before they are dealt with. The guy replies that, yes, and the main character thinks how cheerful he is and whether she should play along with his good mood. The girl knows that Felix hated the Duke of Fez more than anyone else, as he was incompetent, greedy, and did not submit to the authority of the Empress. The Duke of Fez didn't like the fact that Julia trusted Eusto so blindly, and like a dirty rat, he decided to take advantage of this. Previously, Julia had no reason to hate the Duke of Fez, and it was only because of this that Felix remained silent. But now that she has spoken out against the Duke, she sees how happy the guy is. At this time, the young man turns to Her Majesty and asks if she has any tasks for him. The girl understands that this is how Felix managed to deceive the nobles, after which she asks if the guy can help her with the papers of the Duke of Fez. After all, she is sure that he will like it, to which the guy agrees about the main character, and he understands that it is time to act. But thanks to her past life experience, she understands what it is all about. Therefore, she must find at least something that will help free Count Benes, and she will succeed. A little while later, the main character puts down the paper and says that Count Benes should be released, because she sees no evidence that he is guilty. The maid states that she will send the order to the lady in the tower, and the main character replies that it is fine. The lady realizes that in their business matters, he is a lot like Manager Lee. After all, he was sure that huge reports were much better than one-page ones. This is a typical incompetent boss who thinks that quantity always exceeds quality. It was only because of this that she had to read every line of all the documents to get to the bottom of it. And it was thanks to people like him that entire civilizations were turned into ruins. At this time, the maid turns to Her Majesty and asks her to take a break. The main character agrees, but when she picks up a cup of tea, she realizes that he is very familiar. Yulia says it's been so long since she last drank it, and the maid asks if she likes it. The girl realizes it's been more than 2 years since Yulia enjoyed this particular Chinese tea. While I was developing a strategy for the next battle, the refreshing aroma of the drink helped clear my thoughts. However, growing and cleaning tea leaves was very difficult. Particular attention had to be paid to water temperature and time. Because if you make a mistake, the drink will become bitter and disgusting. But if you do everything correctly, the tea will immediately acquire a unique taste. Incredibly refreshing and slightly tart, Flenna grew the desperate leaves especially for Julia. And she preferred to dry them herself, so the main character understands that if she had the opportunity to try such tea earlier, she would never have drunk coffee. Felena did an amazing job, and all these efforts were only for Julia and for no one else. The girl replies that she has no reason not to like this tea, and she cannot believe it. How could I forget this incredible taste? At that very moment, someone else is knocking on Her Majesty's door. After which, the woman turns to her and claims that the captain of the royal guard requests an audience, to which the main character agrees. A little while later, she sees that the guy has arrived and then invites him to sit down. The brunette asks what the lady has in mind, but she asks what he means. The guy says that the lady ordered the release of Count Bennis, and the main character replies that this is true. The accusations provided by the Duke of Fez were not enough, and the girl asks if something is wrong. The knight commander says that he hopes that this is really so, but the girl asks what he will do if not. The young man remains silent in response, and the protagonist understands this must have confused him. The canonical Julia certainly wouldn't have done such a thing, and she knows Justo is very worried about it. Well, she only has 2 days left, and she will do everything to survive, even if she has to use Justo's thoughts against him. The lady also points out his silence, and wonders if he really wants to speak, that he suspects her of something. The guy, meanwhile, is wondering in his mind why she's asking him about this. Julia's smile was the most precious thing in Justo's life, he confidently persuaded. That his love and loyalty were dedicated only to her, but now the guy is in great pain because of this. He couldn't believe that the Empress was so terrible and about 3 days ago. Justo admitted that the virtuous Julia never existed, only a lie. And yet, the boy couldn't understand how she could have changed so much in just a few days. At this time, the brunette claims that he is forced to leave her, and when he leaves, the main character lies down on the table. And she realizes that if she were to fall into eternal sleep, she would have surely fallen into it. Julia wonders why he was looking at her so suspiciously, and yet she feels a little sorry for him. But the girl thinks that it's hard for her too, because she can't just get rid of him and leave him nearby either. That's why she's so tired because of this. A little while later, someone else comes into the office and asks if he is disturbing. It turns out to be the Count, and the main character asks if he's arrived. The guy replies that it seems the maid didn't inform her of his arrival, to which the girl replies that no, and she heard everything. After which the guy asks if she is in this state because of Duke Marcus. The main character then asks if he is serious, and the guy confidently answers that he is. Julia smiles menacingly, and understands that he knows that she will not put him into eternal sleep right now. Then she realizes that she needs to talk about something more important, and states that she is glad that everything went well. Her interlocutor replies that this is all thanks to Her Majesty's quick actions, and there is very little time left. The main character asks if they can charge him yet. The man replies that he has found proof of all the Duke of Fez's crimes. After which, he hands them to the lady, and the main character sees that everything is written down so precisely and in such detail. She was tired of looking at Fez's reports all day, but this document was simply amazing. This guy really did a great job. At first, Things weren't that bad, but in the end, he appropriated at least half of the country's budget. Especially last year, the girl is thinking about what she can do with that amount of money. She also can't believe that the guy dared to steal money right in front of her nose, and how many other aristocrats helped him with this. Her interlocutor at this time silently looks at the lady, after which he hands her several more scrolls. The girl wonders where he got all this from, but she even feels how he wants to kill all the corrupt nobility. Besides, this whole pile of documents means only one thing, and that is that he worked all night long. The next morning, the main character opens her eyes and realizes that today is the last day. If she doesn't do anything today, then tomorrow there will be an uprising, and all night she prepared the materials that will form the indictment against the Duke of Fez. The nobles were ordered to report to the palace today and must work hard to survive. Overall, the work went much better than she expected, and the Duke didn't seem to try to interfere. The lady didn't even think that he would believe her, but under Felix's observation, it turns out that he is having a very good time. The man became frightened only when he was ordered to tell everything about her, who was most likely the Duke of Fez. He thought of something again, after which the girl realized that she didn't want to go to work and didn't want to go to the meeting. Well, it is still necessary, and when the lady moves on, someone greets the Empress. The girl says that it is good, and let him announce her arrival, to which he agrees and states that Her Majesty the Empress has arrived. The girl sits on the throne and thanks everyone who has honored her with their presence. The ladies claim she has gathered them there to right the wrongs of the past. Until recently, she could trust the Duke of Fez with the administration of the empire's internal affairs, but recently she received papers about the Duke's unreliability as chancellor, and she must deal with this now. The man immediately screams that this is not true and that they are being brazenly tried to scam them. Someone else is screaming that the Duke is more devoted to her than anyone else, and he is ready to do anything for this empire. And the lady knows this very well because it is true. The main character glares menacingly at all these people, causing them to become frightened. The girl also addresses Count Benes, and he tells him to voice all the accusations against the Duke, to which the guy agrees. The lady thinks that it is necessary for the Count to voice all the accusations, because perhaps then Justo will believe that she has changed, and he will help her remove the Duke of Fez. The Duke immediately cries out to Her Majesty, and he wonders if she will listen to the criminal, but the main character asks if that is really the case. The man screams that he has already told her what he did, and the lady asks if he wants to say that she was wrong. And when she dropped all charges against him due to lack of evidence, the man replies that that's not what he meant. Meanwhile, the protagonist tells the Duke of Fez that she wishes she could trust him, so he'll have a chance to justify himself right then and there. The lady asks him what he thinks of that idea, but the man wants to object, after which the main character tells Count Benes to begin. He also told them what accusations he was making against the most loyal man of this empire. The man claims that next they will hear about all the sins of the Duke of Fez known to him since he was entrusted with the internal affairs of the empire on behalf of the Empress in the year 264 of imperial reign. The lady at this time remembers how her former boss said that everything needs to be sorted in order. He was also interested in what this mountain of garbage was, because last time she made it too long, and now she didn't try at all. He also claimed that the lady should find a middle ground so that everyone would like the presentation, and wondered if she really didn't even know this, and whether she could do anything at all. After which, the main character picked up the computer and realized that the reorganization of enterprises is so simple that even if she goes, she will understand, and she will become a god. In that idiotic manager's presentations. In this life, the main character also drew up the presentation and realized it was all his fault. First, she will give an introduction, then connect the main points, and then the details themselves. Thanks to Felix, she can show all of this in the form of real presentations. At this time, one of the aristocrats says that he cannot believe that this is possible, and that he really was able to do it. The Count at this time claims that from 264 to 273 inclusive, the Duke of Fez appropriated more than 60% of the budget from the entire treasury. He is also accused of taking bribes from other nobles for purely personal gain. After which, the guy makes many more arguments, and in conclusion claims that the Duke of Fez intended to abuse the power that Her Majesty had endowed him with. Therefore, as stated earlier, he accuses the Duke of Fez of his crimes against Her Majesty the Empress and the Empire. The main character at this time rises from her seat and turns to her most devoted servant, the Duke of Fez. The man immediately peels off, and Yulia claims that she believed in his loyalty to the Empire, but he bit her on the hand, the one who fed him, and the girl asks if he remembers what she said 2 days ago. The man immediately screams that this is some kind of misunderstanding because Count Benes is a real criminal. When the main character draws the sword from its sheath, the Duke cries out that the evidence is actually fake. But the lady merely waves a dagger in front of him and asserts that the words of a liar cannot be called true either. The man immediately covers his mouth with his hand, and the main character touches it a little. The Duke, looking at the wound, cries out to Her Majesty, wondering if she's planning to put him to eternal sleep right there. The girl realizes that this won't be the case, though she'd be only too happy to do it herself. The lady claims that she does not want to waste her energy on him, and that there are too many inconsistencies in his reports of his actions. If he planned to get his hands dirty in advance, then why didn't he think it through in more detail? The girl also orders the arrest of the Duke of Fez in connection with today's accusations and his future fate. The decision will be made in 3 days in the courtroom. The aristocrats immediately begin whispering that this isn't the first trial held since the war ended. The main character understands that this trial is being held to prove that Julia will no longer behave like a tyrant and will not indulge the nobles mired in corruption. The Duke at that very moment cries out to Her Majesty that she cannot do this to him because he is innocent. But the girl only claims that from today, the Duke of Fez is deprived of all the privileges he has, and she will not spare any of those. Who dared harm the Empire? A short time later, someone claims that all the knights have gathered. Another one claims that it's time for them to get to work, and of course they can't screw up, because the Empress is not stupid. This will be a difficult time for the knights, and one of them asks if everything will be all right. Another replies that time will tell, and the lady said that the Duke will face mandatory punishment. The man screams that he thinks that these are all her dirty tricks, and they can give up hope. But at that very moment, one of the participants takes off his hood and claims he needs to go. His interlocutor replies that he can't just leave. But the man insists he can't do business with someone who doesn't even understand the situation. Another participant asks if he's really going to trust her, since she's already been this way once. The man claims that even if she is capricious and he chose the wrong path. In any case, the truth will soon be revealed. Also, everyone present there forgot something. The reason for their meeting was to have as few casualties as possible in the end. And now he will resolve this issue without bloodshed and sees no other way out. When the man closes the door, one of the meeting participants says that he really just up and left. Another man claims that he ate, but he still doesn't think that the guy is acting wisely since he is still a foreigner. Another participant immediately swipes his hand across the table and asks if he really just said foreigner. At this time, someone else tells them to stop, and the meeting participants are interested in what the Duke thinks about this. Another of them says it's true and the Duke should also speak out, but the boy remains silent in response. Justo had already made up his mind, and at least that's what he thought, when someone cried out to him that this was a very urgent matter, because the Empress was heading to the tower. The guy decided to find out what was going on there, but the main character simply sent him away. He couldn't understand why she decided to visit such a place. Much later, Her Majesty summoned all the nobles and thanked them for honoring her with their arrival. She didn't expect this to happen. When the guy heard her words, he suddenly began to doubt his decision. The young man only sighs, realizing he's always been an outcast. He's never been able to guide her down the right path. Although he was always there, a little while ago, The guy told Her Majesty the States that the people who were always on her side, after which he asked that the question of their execution be reconsidered. The young man understands that much has happened, but Her Majesty has never changed. And finally, he gave in. To return Her Majesty to her former path, he was willing to sell his soul to the devil and sacrifice anything. The guy realizes that he has finally given up, after which he keeps wondering why everything turned out the wrong way. 2 years ago, a nice ball appeared with a golden glint in its eyes that soon began to fade. Yusto was very young when he first saw her, but he fell in love at first sight because the girl was dangerously beautiful. And those enchanting golden curls simply drove him crazy. The young man knew he needed to see it just one more time, and then his eyes began to imagine things themselves. But he thought that if all this was not a lie, and that if Her Majesty became the same again, after which the young man claims he will meet with Her Majesty tomorrow. The meeting participants turn to the Duke in surprise, and he claims that even if everyone is against her, Her Majesty will still remain a difficult opponent. Yusto understands that he must make sure of everything again, no matter what bitter truth may await him. The main character is in the bath at this time and thinks that, as she expected, it is so relaxing. Even in front of such a large crowd, she was able to show herself as a true ruler, but now her shoulders hurt so much. The lady understands that, according to the novel, the rebellion against Julia will begin tomorrow. However, the Count seems to have lost interest in this event, but she knows nothing about the rest. Yusto's thoughts also remained a mystery to her. The girl realizes that she asked Felix to keep an eye on everything so she could stay informed. After which, the lady drinks a glass of booze and realizes that she doesn't even know. After all, she's done everything she can, and now all that's left is to wait. A short time later, the girl fights against the knight's commander. The lady wonders how this is possible, since Felix didn't say anything like that, and why did Yusto attack her then? At that very moment, the girl twists her leg and begins to fall, and then she can see nothing. As the knight's commander plunges his sword straight into her chest, the lady immediately jumps out of bed. The lady, breathing heavily, realizes it was just a dream. She needs to think about this carefully. After all, she has a bad feeling right now. Today is September 14th, 270. On this day, the Empress. She was plunged into eternal sleep at the hands of Justo. But according to Felix, the rebellion was suppressed. Now the main character asks when Yusto should arrive, and the maid replies that you are at 11 a.m. Julia thinks that she will understand his intentions from the tone of the conversation and words, so everything will be fine, and her life will continue there. But at that very moment, the thought occurs to the lady that even if she worked tirelessly in her past life, it still ended. And the lady thinks this is true, because she can withstand it. A little while later, the lady angrily slams the table. The girl understands that the Duke of Fez did everything wrong, and she must correct only his mistakes. But this man is exactly like her boss, so she needs to pull herself together. Julia thinks that perhaps Count Bainish should be appointed chancellor, since he always does everything perfectly. And he's also very educated. The girl also thinks she's not so stupid as to take on everything herself, and so she considers what to do. At this time, one of the maids approaches Her Majesty and claims that the captain of the knightly guards, Justo Marcus, is requesting an audience. The main character realizes that ultimately, it was the day of her immersion into eternal sleep, after which the lady comes out to him. Well, the guy at that very moment gets down on his knees and greets Her Majesty, the leader of the entire empire. Julia realizes he appears to be unarmed and has no ill intentions. She also asks if she's kept him waiting, to which the young man replies to Her Majesty that it's nothing. A little while later, they are sitting over a cup of tea. The girl asks why he's meeting her. Yusto replies that he has one request for her. Julia wonders what it is, and the guy talks about her aura and asks if the lady could show him one more time. The guy understands that he could ask her for anything, but this is the most suitable option. This golden glow will be the best answer to all his questions. Meanwhile, the main character begins to use her aura. and she wonders if this is the reason he requested an audience. A golden glow filled the entire room, thus dispelling all of Yusto's doubts. The young man immediately asserts that he had the audacity to doubt Her Majesty, and the girl confirms that it is so. At this time, the guy says that he thought that she left forever, and the main character wonders if he really came to tell her this. Yusto says that he came to receive punishment for his misdeeds, and the main character tells him not to think about it, that she would ignore his unwavering loyalty. She wasn't so stupid as to forgive him his sins. After which, the guy remains silent, and the main character realizes that she is no longer the canonical Julia, but she will do everything in her power to protect this empire. But for this, she needs Justo. At this time, the guy turns to Her Majesty and asks to give him a chance to prove his loyalty to her. A little while later, he even kneels before her. A little while later, Felix asks, "How can they speak so disrespectfully of Her Majesty?" The main character wonders at this point. Is the aristocracy inclined towards Justo to support the rebellion? The guy replies that, yes, and it won't be possible to completely destroy the idea, but it's just a matter of time. Moreover, Justo said that the head of the guards will demand a hearing tomorrow. However, he still wants to give them a good whack. The main character says she doesn't want to interfere with his desires, but he needs to conserve his strength. At this time, the guy asks if he can help Her Majesty with something, to which the girl replies that yes. And the young man says that whatever it is, he will do everything in his power. Yulia understands that it was yesterday. According to Felix, he is going to count the ranks of the authorities in the uprising. And yet, Justo has once again proven his loyalty to her, so it is necessary to deal with the Duke of Fez as soon as possible. But even in the original story, he managed to escape capture after Justo's rebellion. While the revolutionaries were busy rebuilding nations, the Duke eventually gathered the people who were dissatisfied with the Rancia Empire and declared war. Due to Julia's absence, the Rancia Empire was in turmoil for many years, so the girl understands that he will definitely not sit idly by. That's why she asked Felix to keep an eye on the Duke. At that very moment, the mage ran into the room, and he cries out to Her Majesty that this man is about to make his move. The protagonist asks if he's talking about the Duke of Fez, to which Felix replies that yes, he was observing his surroundings, and among them, Count Arida began to move. The main character understands that, of course, he was the most faithful follower of the Duke in the novel. Being a greedy man, he did not like Feza very much, but he stayed with him to take advantage of the Duke's power. He was more cautious, which is why he was able to slip away from court that time. The girl then asks Felix to tell her more about it. But the guy agrees, and then starts telling everything. 270 years ago, late at night on September 16th, the Duke sat in prison and thought how the girl could have known a man like him before. He also recalls how the Empress returned from the war, and he slipped substances into her alcohol as he had planned. The Duke bombarded her with handsome men so she couldn't think straight. The Empress was supposed to become his puppet, and he could live as a king without consequences. Well, she deceived him, and he put up with it all and was her faithful dog. The man understands that he needs to show this creature her place. A little while later, someone tells my lord to come out faster, and the man looks up. He says that he was waiting for the Count, and the latter in response asks how he could watch as his lord was humiliated. The man also addresses another person, very similar to the Duke, and tells him to come in. The game also says that he bribed one guard to cover for them, so they wouldn't be exposed so easily. And the man says that he knew he could rely on him. His interlocutor tells the milord that the guards will arrive soon, and they must leave through the underground sewer. The Duke immediately claims that he doesn't care what he did today, and the man replies that he just did his duty. The Duke then asks if he carried out his previous order, to which he replies that, of course he did. The Duke realizes that in preparation for her return to normal, he has established ties with some kingdoms that harbor hatred towards the Rancia Empire. No matter how strong the empire is, if other kingdoms form an alliance, it will lose. As they head through the sewers, the man wonders if this is the only option. His interlocutor replies that, yes, because the guards will not check this place, and the man says that this is for sure, because he must endure this for the sake of his efforts. His interlocutor at this time says that the Duke's entourage will be waiting for him there, after which he will head to the kingdom of Eton. The man immediately smiles and says that this is great because they have a good relationship with him. Well, at the very moment they open the door, they see some kind of light, and the Marquis screams what brainless idiots they are, and what kind of light this is. But at that very moment, they hear someone's voice asking if they enjoyed their freedom. It turns out it's the main character, and the girl claims that she's a little tired, because these worms wriggle too much under her feet. The Duke also looks at the prostrate servants, and also wonders if all these knights were defeated by her, and whether this is even possible. The man immediately turns to the Count and says that this is not good, but he replies that everything is fine because he was prepared for such a situation. After which, the Count says that in order to help the Duke, he has a backup plan. He throws some kind of ball into the sky, after which it starts to glow. Count Arita says that the Duke has no reason to worship this young empress. After all, let him just look at her with this bunch of knights, after which a whole crowd heads behind the Duke. And the Count says they can't compare. Yulia realizes there are more worms there than she thought. The Duke exclaims that everything is as expected from Count Arit. His interlocutor asserts that they will write a new page in history. Her meager escort shows that Her Majesty has overlooked some details, and the Duke cries out that indeed. And after he wins, the Count will occupy the highest position in his palace. His interlocutor then replies yes, and asks the Sir to remember his words. Yulia sighs, realizing this is another empty promise. The girl also says that they do indeed have a lot of mercenaries. Well, this is all pointless, after which the Duke only cries out that Her Majesty has finally spoken. Julia tells him to tell her about it, and the man cries out that Her Majesty has deigned to renounce debauchery and has spoken. She, whose cruel deeds increase every day, decided to open her mouth, and today he, the Duke of Fez, is here to administer justice. After this, the main character asks if he has finished the performance, to which the man is only surprised. Yulia claims that, as she said earlier, she is tired and is becoming more and more bored. The man after this only faces and also screams for all people to attack the dissolute Empress Julia, and they can even plunge her into eternal sleep. But at that very moment, the girl jumps up from her seat and begins to use aura. At this time, the man wonders what this golden light is, and whether it really comes from the Empress. A little while ago, Yusta realized that Her Majesty had challenged him to a duel after so much time. At first she was a little awkward, but now she is on equal terms with him, after which the guy smiles. But at that very moment, the main character wounds his shoulder and says that he was just smiling. Julia was wondering if Yusto was taking her seriously, and his desire to look around during the battle was to end, because the scars on his body would only increase. The guy understood that he already knew very well where each of his scars came from, after which he even asks Her Majesty to forgive him. Now the main character realizes that she is glad she managed to fight Yusto. Fencing is exactly what she wanted to master first and foremost, so she must hone all of Yulia's skills to perfection. The brunette realizes that he cannot believe that Lady One's wife, Ulas, is going into battle, and he thinks that Her Majesty has not changed a bit. But as her servant, he won't let her do all the work alone. At that very moment, someone tells the guy not to flatter himself. The brunette asks what he is talking about, and his interlocutor claims that he is not the only one who knows about the true beauty of Her Majesty. And he is also not the only one who can help her. After which, the poppy draws a circle in the air. But the brunette just moves on, and the guy wonders if he is really ignoring him. The main character, Vada, is in the middle of the crowd for a while, after which the knight commander blocks her back. When someone wants to attack a lady and screams for that wretch to fall into eternal sleep. As soon as the commander manages to react, the enemy lady is immediately wrapped up in something. The magician screams that he will not dare touch Her Majesty with his dirty hands. At this time, Julio cuts down the remaining enemies, and a little while later, the Marquess and the Duke are left alone. At that moment, the Count cries out that he was clearly out of his mind. The main character wonders if that's really true, and the man replies that he was under the influence of the Duke of Fez and could not disobey him, because he would not have left him alive if he had not helped him. He also screams out asking to believe him because he had no choice, but the Duke screams out that he is lying. After all, he was afraid of being slandered. At this point, the Count cried out that he was telling the pure truth, and the main character understands that they are both sinners, so she cannot believe that Julia allowed them to join the nobility. To be so incompetent and occupy such a high position is a real sin. The girl also says that one of them calls it slander, and the other the truth. At the same moment, these two are trying to prove their case, and the girl tells them to shut up. Instead, she suggests they test which of them is right. The lady also says that today is the first day of the Duke of Fez's trial, and she will personally take care of them. The lady immediately points her hand at them and asserts that all their sins, a few will be counted and handed over to the court. A short time later, the aristocrats watch the Duke being led to court and whisper. One of them says that who would have thought that the Duke of Fez turned out to be such a person? When the main character enters the courtroom, the aristocrats immediately bow and claim that they bow before the ruler of this empire. The girl tells everyone to sit down, and one of the men wonders if she is really making an example of them. 2 weeks ago, the lady hit the defense because he was impolite, and as a result, he is not even able to walk. So one of them asks if the other thinks that Her Majesty has changed. The aristocrats remain silent at this time and understand that it is still difficult to believe this, because she could start a massacre again. Julia understands that her aura does not appear damaged, although otherwise such an outcome would be inevitable. The lady also looks at the Count, and when he nods, the woman states that the trial of the Duke of Fez and his supporters is now beginning. The accused Duke of Fez and his other henchmen committed the following crimes that harmed the empire. And last but not least, he has 2 more accusations against the Duke. The main character asks what kind, and the man replies that the first crime is the disclosure of state secrets by another kingdom. And at the same time, he secretly obtained drugs prohibited by the kingdom and slipped them to the ladies. At the same moment, the aristocrats ask if they said anything about drugs, and the man replies that it is true. Julio and Felix are immediately shocked and then scream for the lady to allow them to execute this man right there and then. The main character just raises her hand as if showing them to calm down. At this time, the aristocrats are wondering whether this means that Her Majesty behaved this way because of drugs, and whether the Duke of Fez is to blame for this. Someone else is screaming that it was strange from the very beginning, since 2 years ago Her Majesty mourned those who fell in battle. And it doesn't matter where on the battlefield or elsewhere, but for Her Majesty, the empire and the people have always been the most important thing. One of the aristocrats cries out that such a sinner as the Duke cannot be left alive, and that it was he who dragged Her Majesty's reputation to the bottom. The main game is just silent at this time, after which she understands that she feels how she begins to change. Thanks to Cyril, they managed to create the medicine, but was that the only problem she had to face? The lady also realizes that this novel is unexpectedly harsh towards her, and the picture is rather murky. The girl also realizes that she knows nothing more. At that moment, the aristocrats scream for the man to be executed, but the main character tells them to stop. After all, she knows that many have suffered because of the ongoing wars, and she is tired of seeing someone's red liquid constantly spilling. The Duke then looks at Her Majesty with hope, but the protagonist says that someone like the Duke of Fez should not profit from her mercy. Because of him and his dirty minions, many innocent people were sacrificed, and the fact that he is a duke does not mean that he can take advantage of the innocence of other people. Let him know that all the atrocities he has committed are so great that even their miserable lives will not be enough to atone for them. But since she is the judge in this courtroom, She must ensure that her decision satisfies the will of the public. So she will give the order to execute them all. The Duke immediately asserts that the lady cannot do this. And everything was supposed to go wrong, so she can't, but the main character orders them taken away. That same day, an unusually swift execution was carried out in the Ranchea Empire. After which, Yulia wanted to erase the sinner's cries and faces from her memory as quickly as possible. The girl realizes she doesn't know how the Yulia in the novel would have acted, but she feels she made the right choice. The main character thinks that everything is fine because now she must make sure that she has managed to change that part of the nobility that is mired in corruption. Much time later, the lady is in bed and then begins to toss and turn. The girl immediately jumps up and realizes that she is very tired and seems to be going crazy, after which she keeps thinking about what is wrong with this body. But then the girl realizes that recent events actually went well. Even after sparring with Yusto, this was still her first real fight, although she could see how many people were about to attack her. But she wasn't nervous or afraid at all. The lady felt a disconnect between her mind and body. This discrepancy may never disappear. The girl also understands that yesterday, at that moment when she swung the sword, she felt she could win and was certain of it. An unshakable determination pierced her. The lady realizes she's only been in Yulia's body for a week, so all of this seems strange to her. Perhaps the real Yulia is still there, and it was she who helped her at that moment. After which the girl sighs and realizes that she has no time to think about it, because there is still a whole mountain of work ahead. I ask for a year since the war ended, and usually its consequences should already have been eliminated. Well, thanks to the Duke of Fez and his followers, the situation has worsened. Besides, other kingdoms also pose a threat. According to the original novel, there was one state that united with the Duke of Fez to start an endless war, and this was the Kingdom of Eton. The ruler didn't care if his people suffered until they gained even more power. The protagonist understands that she's alive, and Yusto is on her side, so it's unlikely they'll take action. And starting a war right now is a bad idea. Because she's there at Eton. She's the most vicious villain of the entire era, named Gayane. She is the daughter of the king of the Eastern Empire and is also an excellent manipulator. Yulia realizes she's glad she has Felix, but she'll have to study Eton too. However, first, she should make a list of people she trusts. The girl also wonders why she continues to think about this even during rest. Julia understands that she was about to relax, but as soon as the lady lies down, someone knocks on the door and addresses Her Highness. She also claims that someone has requested an audience with her. The lady merely remains silent in response. But a little while later, she ends up there and realizes that she is definitely going to relax after this meeting. A little while later, someone bows before Her Majesty and cries out, asking to be plunged into eternal sleep for having lost faith in her. The main character silently looks at them and understands that these people were not with Julia like Yusto, but fought next to her on the same battlefield. In short, they reciprocated the Empress's trust in the past, and the lady thinks she can trust and rely on them. Yulia tells them not to talk nonsense so early in the morning. And they also stood up. These men immediately obeyed the lady, but one of them told Her Majesty that their loyalty had been violated. Yulia claims that a lot of red liquid was spilled at the execution site yesterday, so she no longer wants to punish anyone for minor crimes. The man immediately cries out that this is no petty crime, and the main character says that technically they overcame it, but in reality, the Duke of Fez created this illusion. The girl also asks if this is true, after which one of the ladies says that they did not fulfill their duties as her subordinates. The main character only says that if they want punishment for this, then they should be sure that she will announce it. One of the servants claims that they will accept any punishment that Her Highness gives them, and the main character says that it's good, and that's better. The girl understands that the previous empress would definitely not show mercy, and the punishment for the crime would be immersion into eternal sleep. But now the lady says that from tomorrow, she wants everyone to start working for their empire. People are surprised by this, and the main character smiles and understands that she did a great job. Count Cyril Benes has proven his loyalty, and he is very hardworking. But because of the mess that the Duke of Fez has made, she still lacks people, especially those she can trust. However, she managed to find them almost immediately. Everything is going surprisingly smoothly, but the girl thinks that there is so much work, and she doesn't want to do it herself, so now they have no choice. People immediately turn to Her Majesty and ask if she really trusts her subjects so much. The girl replies that she believes that everyone can make a mistake at least once. So let them make sure they don't make the same mistake twice, because she won't be able to turn a blind eye to it the second time. After which these people bow and cry out that they understand. Yulia understands that in any case, she must outline their responsibilities and not waste time. After which, the girl claims that first of all, she will appoint Count Cyril Benes. As Prime Chancellor, everyone is immediately surprised and wonders whether the position was given to a foreigner like him. But then another claims that he swore allegiance to the empire, so he is confident that this decision was deliberate. And they must believe in Her Majesty and follow her, because it is their duty. The man at this time claims that choosing him is not the best idea, but oh well, which leaves everyone else in shock. And the main character is furious and wonders what he's talking about. After Yulia fell into eternal sleep, he did so much for the country. And the girl wonders if it's really that hard for him to trust her now because of what's been going on for the last couple of years. She thought he'd agree right away, and the other servants are fine too. But she thinks Cyril's doing a great job. She has so much planned, and all of it can only be entrusted to a reliable person. Yulia claims that she understands that it is not easy, and does not want to blame everything only on him. She is also glad to see everyone there, but they have urgent matters to attend to, so they will discuss the details next time. After which the lady leaves, and the servants immediately agree. A short time later, the girl finds herself among a mountain of papers. She also wonders if anyone other than Cyril can handle all of this. She doesn't think so, but the guy doesn't want to work anymore after the Duke of Fez's words. And the girl wonders if he's really trying to prevent a revolution. But Cyril wanted to cooperate from the very beginning. He utterly hated corruption and considered the leadership incompetent. That's why she wanted to give him power. But she still doesn't understand why his reaction was so cold, and it was as if she had been slapped in the face. At this time, someone hands the lady a cup of tea and asks if she wants Count Benes to be next to her. The girl replies that he is very smart, but Felix says that there are many other people. For example, the Marquis, who accompanied Her Majesty during the war, asks Felix if he likes Count Benes. The guy replies that he approves of all Her Majesty's decisions and actions. Yulia says he understands that's not what she's talking about. Ars says that she is right, because he doesn't like Count Benes, even though she appointed him. He also knows that many people think the same, and he came there when he was still a young man, and he was then a nobleman in another country. The main character then realizes that they think it is too early for him to take such a position. It is obvious that the nobility will not complain now, because they asked Julia for forgiveness because they respect her. The nobles treated her well and helped the Ranchea Empire from her childhood. She went through many options and settled on Cyril because she considers him the most worthy. After which, the lady thinks that it's not a big deal because they just have their own principles and priorities. It's foolish to think she can change their minds. It would be playing with fire. But the lady understands that she shouldn't let things with Cyril slide. A little while later, the Count asks his interlocutor what he just said. The brunette replies that he met with Her Majesty and proposed his candidacy for the post of Chancellor. Cyril asked if he was serious now, and Yusto asked if he really thought he came there for stupid jokes. Cyril replies that he knows perfectly well what kind of person the Duke is, because he will stop at nothing if necessary. But he is not from Ranchea. He should have remembered that by now. If he becomes Chancellor, it will bring some problems to all of them, and he has sworn allegiance to Her Majesty. Meanwhile, the brunette says, "That's the thing. The Count wants to serve the Empress from the shadows. If he thinks he's chosen the right tactic, he's wrong." After which, he asks him to reconsider the proposal. The fact that he's refusing the ministerial position or that he's a foreigner isn't so important. But the fact that he is so fixated on loyalty to the Empress is truly alarming. Cyril realizes that this guy knows more than he thought, and the nobles did not expect that Fez would be executed. After this, everyone came in fear to beg for help, and the lady could really execute them for treason. The nobles thought that it was better to serve this Empress poorly than to wait for the one who they did not know whether had come to her senses or not. Her loyal people hate him, so if Her Majesty wants to fight corruption, then let him not make a choice in his favor, because it will be better this way, and he thinks that this is a stupid decision. Yusto claims that the main thing is the words of Her Majesty, and if she has made her choice, then how dare he contradict her? At this time, he understands that, judging by his mood yesterday, the guy will not be happy with the foreigner. He also claims he doesn't mean to say he doubts him, and the brunette asks what's wrong then. Cyril wonders if the nobility will agree with this decision and whether he himself would agree. Yusto replies that everyone agrees, and it's hard to believe, but he decided everything yesterday. The Count, shocked, says that's impossible. And the guy replies that, as far as he can see, he's convinced everyone, so everything's fine with them. A little while ago, he said they needed to convince Count Banus to accept the offer, and that would require swallowing their pride. Someone else said that the only thing that irritates him is that he says everything so directly, and now the brunette claims that everyone supported him. Therefore, he asks Count Banus for permission to ask whether he is refusing because of people who dislike him and cannot withstand their pressure. The man is silent for a while after this, and then claims that he refused because he was not ready. And the fact that he's a foreigner could have led to a number of problems. Yusto says he's simply making excuses and suggests the man admit he's a weak person who fears work more than shuffling papers. The Count claims that this is a lie, because he would not have stayed in this country if this were the reason, and he is far from weak. Then the Duke asks him to prove it, and the guy understands that he only has to look at this because the Duke is trying to drive him into a corner, and this is a provocation. After which, he actually says it's good. If you think about it, it's not as bad as it seems. And the Count says that since this is the case, he will tell Her Majesty that he has accepted her proposal. The man realizes that he felt relieved after the conversation, even though it brought out his feelings of envy, insecurity, and long-standing doubts. But now he claims he'll show them what he's made of. When night falls, the main character is still training with the dummy. The lady also recalls how she asked whether the Count really wanted to say that he agreed to take this position, to which he replied that he did, and he would accept her proposal with honor. Yulia understood that this was very good, and she didn't understand why he changed his mind so quickly. Of course, there are plenty of other candidates for the Chancellor's position, but she needs someone with a sharp mind. She needs such people on her side. And besides, Cyril always says everything directly, so the main character said that she can rely on him. That's when someone approaches the lady and says that it seems like it's already late at night, and also asks if she's tired yet. Julia answers that no, and asks what about him, and if everything is okay with him. Yusto replies that he cannot rest while the Empress is busy, after which the main character calls him to her. And they begin the duel. The guy says the lady works too much, and the girl replies that he's right. The young man also adds that she gets too little rest, and the lady replies that this is a big problem. And her interlocutor says that he is responsible for her well-being and comfort, after which the main character becomes interested. Does he really think that she constantly does things that harm her, and the guy asks why she thinks so? The lady replies that it was he who convinced Cyril to accept her proposal. Julia understands that he knew the nobles respected Julia and took advantage of this. And then he persuaded Cyril to agree to accept her proposal in order to remove responsibility for the nobles. He was not afraid to lose his dignity, and she noticed this trait of his when she read the novel. So the girl thinks he's a really good man. A little while later, they finish the duel. And the main character thanks the guy for fighting her today. The young man replies that it's nothing special. After which the lady states that there is a lot of work tomorrow, and they will start early in the morning. The brunette says that it's okay, and he will do everything, to which the main character thanks him. A little while ago, the aristocrats were whispering behind the guy's back and claiming that he was the Empress's illegitimate son. But he seemed a bit sad, after which one of them turned to the guy and asked if he thought they would treat him the same way they did. They also said he didn't belong there. But a little while later, the Empress warned Giusto not to remain silent. After all, he does not deserve such treatment, and he will forever remember these words, and they also became his light. Now the main character tells Giusto not to forget the straw man, to which he agrees. The guy understands that if someone could feel the power of this light, they would probably also help her, risking losing their pride. Giusto is ready to do anything. A little while later, Cyril places the papers in front of the Empress, and he claims he's taking 3 days off starting tomorrow. The girl asks if he really wants 3 days, and her interlocutor replies that he thinks that he worked hard enough and deserves this vacation. A while ago, one of the aristocrats said that the reason the Empress chose Count Bennis as chancellor was obvious. Another said he thought the man was a simple workaholic, but it seemed he didn't have much choice. It seemed to him that Count Bennis only knew how to work, so he needed to watch him and see if it wasn't amazing. A little while later, someone said that he had never seen Count Bennis so tired, and that the lady was loading him with so much work. The main character sighs and realizes that she too is tired of all this, because they have been messing around with these papers for a month already. The lady says that it is fine and let him rest for the next 3 days, but the man says that she should also take a break. Her Majesty also needs to rest, after which he keeps shouting that tomorrow is Thanksgiving, which will last 3 days. If the lady continues to work and does not take a vacation, he will be worried the entire holiday. After this, Yulia just remains silent and understands that she is the boss, so she needs to work and he can take a break. In her past life, the lady claimed that she was taking her annual leave, but her boss screamed at her. Does she really think she can take leave at the same time as her boss? After which, he kept insisting he wouldn't give it to her. And now the girl is thinking about how she could at least avoid turning into the same kind of scum. After which, everyone agrees. A little while later, Felix says that if he had known what would happen, he would have dressed better. He also wonders if Her Majesty will be accompanied by another person. The maid tells him that it is impossible for someone else to travel with Her Majesty, and the young man replies that he knows. At this time, Julia turns around and asks to look after the palace while she is gone. The girl also understands that she is leaving the palace for the first time, and so during this vacation, she will need to have a good rest. There will be a festival soon, so she needs to be at the palace at that time. At that very moment, the girl notices someone else and immediately hides behind the nearest wall. But when she looks at the guy, she thinks that he's cool and he looks just like in the picture. He is really very handsome, but at the same time, the lady is surprised because she understands that when Giusto first confessed his love to Julia, she gave him not a sword, but a special dagger, and the guy couldn't use it, but carried it with him forever as a talisman. At that very moment, Julia wonders why she suddenly remembered the lines from the novel, and then she even sees this dagger in the guy's pocket. The girl realizes that Giusto likes Julia. The head of the royal guard, Duke Giusto Marcus, is a man who would do anything for Julia. He suffered watching the Empress destroy her own empire, and the reason why he wanted to lead the revolutionary movement. This is a feeling that he kept in his heart, but the Julia he knows and loves is not there now. But she can't give a clear answer whether she likes him or not, so the girl thinks about what feelings she has for him. From the moment she became Julia, Justa always helped her, but what she feels for him cannot be called love. The lady thinks that they have become quite close, and she is so sad that she is not Julia. But she accepted the fact that her body belonged to her, and therefore she had to play her role well. The girl understands that this is not the guy's fault, but he still loves the real Julia. And the lady understands that she must leave, but at that very moment, the guy notices her. At the same moment, the main character thinks whether she did anything wrong, and the brunette at the same moment. Her Majesty greets her with a smile on her face. The protagonist realizes he only shows this charming smile to Yulia. And this makes her feel terribly guilty, but the girl is only interested in what brought him there on his vacation. The guy replies that he hasn't been taking good care of the horse in the last few days, but at that very moment, his dagger falls to the floor. The guy notices this with surprise, after which the main character realizes that, of course, he carries it with him. Julia wants to break the silence and claims that the servants should do this, and the guy says that he enjoys courting her, and the lady says that this is good. At this time, the brunette says that the lady also used to love caring for horses, and the main character understands that, of course, Julia loved it. Justo says he's curious, since the lady likely came there for a reason. The girl replies that she hasn't had a rest in a while, so she decided to leave the castle and take a walk, and the guy asks if she wants to attend the Thanksgiving festival. The main character says it's the first holiday since the war, so she wanted to see it with her own eyes. The brunette says he'll keep an eye on her from afar, and the main character says that he will get tired of following her, to which the guy replies that it doesn't matter and asks to let him follow her. The girl replies that it's not worth it, because she doesn't want to be the one who takes away her subordinates' time of their rightful rest, and no one will harm her anyway. At this time, the brunette approaches the lady and says that he knows that she is very worried about her, but he still worries about her. Therefore, he asks that only you go out accompanied, and it does not necessarily have to be him. Yulia is a little surprised by this reaction and says that it was 2 years ago. If only he had followed her or asked someone. The main character, meanwhile, is thinking about what happened 2 years ago. This makes Justo regret it, and if you think about it, the guy so persistently asked her to rest. Felix asked to tell him if something happens. The girl thinks about what this means. The lady also wonders if something really happened 2 years ago. In her past life, she carefully read this story 3 times. On those days that she spent alone, and not to mention that she reread passages from the middle of the novel separately. But right now, nothing comes to mind, no matter what, and that's rather strange. But at that very moment, someone tells the lady to go to sleep, and she gave up her memories. The girl immediately felt ill and then collapsed. Justo at that moment grabs the lady and turns to her, and the girl replies that it's okay. The guy says that this is not true and Her Majesty should not experience such pain. Well, the lady says again that everything is fine with her because she went outside once and does not want to return to the castle. She also says that maybe the best guy will go for a walk with her because she doesn't want to appear at the festival alone. After which, the Empress moves on, and the boy follows her. A short time later, they are already in the city. When the lady watches Justo walk silently, she only sighs and thinks that if he really wanted to go somewhere alone, Tom could have pretended not to notice her. And this guy is very strange. A little while ago, the girl told him to take off his hood so as not to arouse suspicion. The guy agreed in response to this, but told Her Majesty that there would be a lot of people in the village. The girl replied that, of course, it was a festival, and what else did he expect? Brennan replied that he meant there would be a lot of people from all walks of life with their own problems, and he thought she knew all that. Yulia understands that, taking Roman into account, many people come not only for the festival, because everyone wants to learn about and discuss the state of the nobility and how they can get rich. The more people on the streets, the faster information spreads, and even a large number of foreigners doesn't attract attention. Thanksgiving is a good time for gossip. Their main character understands that there really are low-status nobles there, tourists. Migrants who want to stay. Hey, there are completely different people gathered there. The main character notices the bread and realizes that it looks delicious. Well, when the lady wants to take it. Then suddenly, Justo stops her and asks her to let him try. The girl says that this is normal food and everyone buys and eats it. But the guy replies that they can't risk it. If he is not around, anything can happen to her. So he asks to be allowed to check. The main character says that it's good, and then hands the merchant a coin. A little while later, someone turns to the respected ones and asks if the 2 of them are knights. Yusto immediately looks at him menacingly, and the man says that he does not want to quarrel with them. And he's an engineer, and he's also retired now, and he finished his military service a few years ago, so he's much older than the guy. The main character immediately pushes the brunette away and asks what the grandfather wanted. The man replies that due to the festival, competitions are being held throughout the city. Their restaurant has exclusive drinks and dishes for the day. The competition will last up to 5 hours, after which the winners will be announced. And to be honest, he thinks that at the festival everyone should eat and drink well, and only the winners. But these thugs won all the drinks from them, after which the man points at them. The man says that rules are rules. Their victory is not disputed, but the fact that they can beat up the sellers is scary. Yulia asks if there was a fight, and the man replies that the security guards intervened in time and maybe he doesn't understand something. But it's a festival now, so why bother with fights? Yulia understands that these are the right words. The festival should be a place of joy and fun, so as one of the organizers, she shouldn't interfere with that. But you can't use a sword like that, and you need to be on your guard, because they are clearly ready for hand-to-hand combat. At this time, the brunette says that he will do it and she didn't want to stand out, after which he heads towards these people. At this time, the man asks if this guy is really a lady, and the girl replies that no, and he's just a colleague. The brunette approaches the hooligans, and one of them asks if they've seen each other before. After which, everyone tells him that the guy should not claim that he is a security guard, but they were told that they would not interfere in their affairs. At this time, Yusto only waves his hand for him to come closer. His interlocutor immediately becomes furious, and he also yells and insults him. Another guy tells the boss that he wants to get beat up, so let him show him what he can do. The man immediately screams so that the guy doesn't whine when he starts leaking red liquid. But when he attacks, Yusto deftly dodges and also hits this guy on the neck. People immediately shout out that it's good work and that it's keeping up the good work. But his opponent rises up with harsh words. The guy looked at his watch and realized that there was very little time left, and he had to fulfill Her Majesty's request. After which, he hits him in the stomach from that man, which knocks him out. At the same moment, the clock strikes 5 p.m. and the organizer claims that the winner of the festival is a man with black hair. A little while later, people leave and say that it was a great reception and fun. The main character and Yusto also leave, and the lady claims that pretending to be an abortion clinic was not easy. Yusto replies that it is indeed true. A while ago, someone asked if he was also a knight, and after all, he's become so famous today. Some of them also claimed that knights were incredibly cool. The main character, watching Yusto, realized he had done well. But at that same moment, someone else turned to the lady and asked if she really was a knight. The girl replied that yes, and the woman said that her little sister was also a knight. When she saw one this size today, she just remembered her and how funny she swung her sword. At this time, a relative of the grandmother comes up to her and says that she is retelling it again, after which she tells the grandmother that she has already told this story. The main character at this time silently watches these people and understands that she needs to work harder so that all these people live happily in the future. The girl understands that. Ultimately, good people live there, but at the same moment the girl hears someone passing by her and whispering a request not to come back. And don't forget, the main character at this point thinks this can't be happening, and she's heard that voice before. The girl immediately follows this man, but at that very moment she hears some kind of scream. The main character understands that the scream is heard in the opposite direction from where the mysterious woman ran away, and if she catches up with her, he might understand how he ended up in this world. But at the same moment, another cry is uttered asking for help. The main character also heads in that direction and understands that now it is more important to help the person. When they run up there, they see several men beating a woman, and she asks them to stop. The man cries out, asking if she's telling him to stop, and that she dared to laugh at them. The girl immediately replies that she wouldn't dare. And the main character looks menacingly at these people and understands that these are the very same idiots that Yusto defeated. At this time, The man cries out that the girl is nice to both knights and guards, but dares to laugh at them. The lady screams, asking them not to do this, but the man only grabs her by the head. Julia, looking at this, becomes furious, but suddenly someone stops her. It turns out to be Yusto. The guy claims that he will deal with them and asks Her Majesty to calm the girl down. Yulia replies, "That's fine, and so be it." One of the men then cries out, asking why the girl did that. And she also swings at her, and suddenly someone hits him right in the face, which sends him flying. His friend, meanwhile, calls Yusto names and asks if he really thinks that even if he wins one fight, he'll be fine. He became the coolest one there, after which he even lifted the girl by her hair. Well, at that very moment, the main character jumps up and hits him on the hand, after which he lets go of the girl. Another man looks at her angrily and says what a scoundrel she is. He is going to attack the lady. But at that very moment, Yusto stands in front of her and claims that he is his rival. People passing by understand that they shouldn't interfere because it looks dangerous. A little while later, all of Yusto's opponents are lying on the ground. Meanwhile, the young man turns to the lady and asks if she's okay. The girl with green hair answers yes and thanks them, and the main character asks what happened. Her interlocutor replies that this man used to be a real knight, but when the war ended, he began to come there more and more often and drink. And when he got drunk, he became very cruel. And even if no one had reported him, there would have been no investigation. After being plunged into the eternal sleep of the Duke of Fez, they calmed down a little, but today they suddenly went crazy. After this, the main character tells the girl not to worry, that everything will be fine with her now, and they will never go there again. The green-haired lady asks if this is true, after which she cries out with gratitude and says that the knights are their salvation in difficult times. A short time later, the protagonist approaches Yusto and says that as soon as Thanksgiving is over, they must establish a guard responsible for the capital's security. Yusto claims he will prepare everything. At this point, the protagonist recalls the green-haired lady's words about them being quiet for a while. The girl realizes that they were originally knights of the Duke of Fez. And perhaps this strange woman has something to do with it. A little while later, someone erases the girl's face. This man says that the Duke of Fez fell into eternal sleep because of Guyana, and she again dared to disobey her father's orders, after which the man tosses her a robe and something else. And he also tells her to go and check the situation, because it cannot happen that she will return. The woman agrees in response to this, and then moves on with her father. Grozno says menacingly that she should not repeat her mistake, to which the lady agrees. The girl understands that she will not make the same mistake twice, and this time she will follow her father's order, and also hopes that she can change everything. And he'll make that man regret turning back time. When the girl goes out into the square, she wonders if she'll be able to meet this lady, and also whether she will be able to fulfill her father's order. The reason he sent her there was the Empress's desire to leave the palace. So now she must report that they are in danger, and this girl must recognize her. Guyana also knows that her father is watching her, but she still has to take the risk. The lady understands that she needs to meet with Empress Julia, and a little while later, she sees a familiar hair color. When the lady approaches her, she understands that if this is the case, she must definitely tell about it. Guyana hopes the girl remembers everything. 2 years ago, the lady spoke to her while under a spell, and she will definitely tell her everything. However, when the girl tries to speak, she realizes that her voice does not come out and immediately dies, as it was all her father's doing. This dishonest man took measures to make it as hard as possible for her, but she still needs to leave the lady a hint. So she needs to use manipulation, which is her ability to control people. But she doesn't know if she can pull it off with Yulia. The girl understands that she needs to do something urgently so that this lady will hear her, because she only has a moment. At that moment, the main character hears someone asking her not to come back and not to forget. But when she turns around, the girl realizes she's done it. Guyana also thinks whether the Empress will follow her, because if she is with Julia, then the power of her father, King Eaton, will not be able to influence her. But at that very moment, she hears someone else scream. And at that moment, the Empress turns around. The woman understands that the Empress will certainly help her people. Julia decided to free herself from Fez's pressure and eliminated him, which means she won't trust her either. Well, in any case, she was convinced that the Empress had returned and that she was the ruler who wanted to protect her subjects and was constantly thinking about their well-being. A little while later, someone breaks a glass in front of the lady, after which everyone asks him if she is making fun of him. And from the very beginning, she didn't intend to do anything, to which the girl replies that this is not so. Well, the man just tells her not to dare lie and that she needs to be taught again. He rises from his seat and approaches the lady, after which she starts screaming that if she can't do something well, then why bother with it at all? Let her regain all her memories. The girl responds with silence, while the man hits her and screams that she's disappointed him again. She doesn't seem to understand that this is all for her own good. The girl thinks about the villainous Guyene, and she realizes that he made her this way, and she finds it disgusting. The man insists that's not why he came back, and even an idiot like her should understand that. The girl replies that she understands and thinks that even if she fights him, she has no chance of salvation, and that is worse than hell. Her father smirks at this point and claims he likes it better this way. He also pats the lady on the head and says she's a good girl. But Guyana thinks that it would have been better if she had never been born, instead of wielding a power that only torments her. Well, she doesn't lose hope, so she asks the Empress to find her and put her into eternal sleep, because she is ready to admit her guilt. But I am still sure that someone will try to interfere with the greatest Empress. At this time, the main character realizes that she needs to settle the incident with the retired knight that happened recently. The lady also remembers how she told the girl not to worry because they would no longer appear in that bar. The green-haired lady thanked the main character with tears in her eyes and claimed that the knights were their last hope. Julia understands that the Empress does not deal with such petty matters, but she must show the people that she is ready to help everyone and wants to become an example for them. Let this be a warning to those who think they can get away with anything. A little while later, someone screams at the guard and tells him to listen, because why don't they let him out? The man also claims that he will pay any ransom and asks how much he owes. He also asks if he knows him and why the guard is in such a bad mood. The criminal asks how long this will continue and whether the war is over. He also suggests not to say now that he will return to the Empress and continue to carry out her orders. At that moment, his friend turns to him and asks what these knights know, this one as obedient as a little lamb. Their commander claims that their country is ruled by a tyrant, so how long do they think she will remain on the throne, and what will happen to her country during her reign? He also wonders why everyone is pretending to be blind and deaf, since he'll repeat himself so the man will simply let him go. The criminal also claims to have very valuable information that could be useful to him, and asks if he's interested. He also advises not to listen to such an empress, because they definitely need a new ruler. The main character is outside the door at this point, listening to all this. Yulia understands that they can say whatever they want, because she's certain someone is behind these rumors. At that very moment, the lady bursts into the room, and when the criminal sees her, he screams that these are the knights they encountered recently. Well, when he is about to run up to them, suddenly the guards stop him. The criminal wonders if she's really the boss there, and his colleague claims that if this lady is a high-ranking person, then it's now clear why their country is in such a deplorable state. The criminal also asks if the girl knows who is behind them and whether she doesn't understand that he is still treating her politely and whether she wants to respond in kind. The main character, in response to this, only remains silent, and the man says that, of course, if she values her life. Two guards standing nearby understand that he should think about his soul. The criminal immediately screams to be let go, because the girl doesn't know how important he is, and, as he understands, she is the main one there. He also says that if the lady wants to continue living peacefully, then she should let him go now. The main character at this time looks at him indifferently. after which the guards leave him. At this time, the man approaches the lady and says that she is proud and it would be a shame to spoil such a beautiful face. After which, he tells the girl not to worry, that everything will be fine. Yusto calls her back and becomes furious, but the main character stops him. Julia claims that she is ready to fight him and asks how long he is going to chat. The criminal is enraged by these words and claims he's not afraid of her. However, he cries out that he really wouldn't want to hurt her pretty face. He immediately jumps up to the girl and is about to strike, but the main character, she deftly punches him in the stomach, causing him to fall writhing in pain. Yulia insists that there are people who just talk and do nothing, and he is just one of them. After which the criminal switches off, and his colleagues at the same moment ask how she did it. But when they are about to attack her, the lady pushes one away and then kicks him right in the neck. Another man finds a stick on the ground and is about to attack with it, but the main character, he hits him in the neck with his hand, causing all the criminals to fall to the floor. The Slobki immediately turn to Her Majesty the Empress, and the criminals lying on the floor are wondering if she really is the Empress, and why did she come there? The woman immediately claims that they are criminals and are sentenced to correctional labor in the province of Salis. The annual temperature fluctuations there are approximately 100 degrees. Summers are incredibly hot and winters are cold. The average annual temperature on Salusa is rising rapidly, leading many to say that living there is worse than falling into an eternal slumber. One of the men immediately claims that he has never heard of this, while the other claims that the man said that he would pay them. After which, one of them screams that it's not fair because they are not criminals, but this guy is a criminal. The main character asks who this guy is, and their leader stands up and shouts that it's true because he paid them. Yulia asks what else he can tell about him, but the criminal shouts that he knows nothing. After all, he was wearing a cloak, and this is what he can say for sure, and he is also sure that he was young. The main character realizes that she hasn't heard about this before, but then she waves her hand. Ordering the guards to take these criminals away, one of them cries out that he was simply doing what he was ordered and doesn't want to go to that hole. A little while later, the girl sits at her desk and remembers what happened to her, and also how the lady with gray hair asked her not to come back and not to remember. The girl thinks why her responsibilities are only increasing, because it's so hard. Even after the Duke of Fez entered into eternal slumber, it seemed the level of corruption hadn't diminished much. She'd hoped there would be no incidents on Thanksgiving Day, and hadn't expected to encounter such horrible people there. Well, the lady understands that it is their fault, because taking out anger on people just because they lost their job is terrible. And besides, for some reason they were confident that someone would support them. Looking at what the new monarch is doing, it becomes clear why the colonies are in such disarray. The girl wonders if it could have been the royal family that lost to Julia, although it's possible that the fugitive Emperor of Eton and his family intervened. Despite the pleas of her subjects, Julia did not execute him. Someone told Her Majesty that history had never seen a royal family of a conquered colony survive. Well, the main character replied that she understood in advance that many would be against it, but she still wanted to save their lives. The girl also asked if she couldn't handle it all. Whoever it was, she would honor anyone who came to surrender on their own. Now the girl understands that this is, of course, good and even interesting in some ways. But with the pardon of this family, her concerns have become more complicated. The lady thinks what she should do now, because now she needs to direct her forces to various fugitives. She also understands that it will not be easy, because if she pursues them, it may not please the other royal families of the colonies. Of course, the conflict could be hushed up, but I wouldn't want to start one in the first place. If she resolves all issues solely through force and persecution, her country will collapse. She should not provoke anyone, and she must act with extreme caution. It also takes time to build relationships and let the colonies understand that they need to work together. This is exactly what Yulia wanted. The protagonist understands that she certainly isn't her, but she would like to continue her work. It's the least she can do now that she's found herself in this body. Lady also understands that a difficult path awaits her. Then she looks at her desk and realizes it's time to get down to business, otherwise she won't get anything done. But a little while later, someone knocks on her office door. It turns out it's Cyril. The guy says Her Majesty has been working since early morning. The girl replies that she has many important matters to attend to and asks if he's forgotten how concerned she is about the situation in the city. The guy puts down the papers and claims he thinks everything will get better soon. The main character asks if this is true, and her interlocutor replies that soon people like these former knights will no longer stick their necks out, knowing that the Empress personally controls the situation. The girl understands that this is true, but it will still be difficult. The Count says that last time there were people who were very unhappy with the situation with Fessa. Many still consider this action wrong. After which, he hands the lady a petition, and when the main character opens it, she wonders what's in there now. When the girl opens the paper, she reads that people cannot return the money because the interest is too high. And they know the Empress is a wonderful ruler in person, so they think she can help them. At least, they hope so. Julia asks what kind of district Shet is, and the Count replies that it is currently controlled by Baron Shet. Well, at that very moment, the guy sees the expression on the Empress's face and claims that Baron Shet is close to Count Envid. Count Envid was a nobleman in Nasran. To maintain his reputation, he began collaborating with Fessa. The protagonist asks if his name was mentioned in court. Her interlocutor replies that this is true, since Fessa was able to prove they weren't allies by saying he wasn't from the Ranchea Empire. Count Individual believes that one should act only in one's own interests, and that he will do nothing else. The protagonist reflects on these words and realizes that what will happen next is already clear. When the nobles swore allegiance to the Empire during the unification of the colonies, many thought that Julia would become their lord. People did not want their land to be confiscated, and this is probably why the Count wanted to keep his title by becoming an ally of Fess. The girl claims that there are many people in this country who will do anything to keep their title from being taken away. The Count replies that Her Majesty is right, and the girl asks if this petition was sent because the harvest is currently underway, to which the man replies that it was. Then the lady says that she should pay attention and that she will have to go on her own. Cyril asks if Her Majesty is certain, and the girl replies that it's no coincidence that the letter reached her directly. The state has united to preserve its status and rights. Nasrin was one of them. Because the lords were so powerful, the power of kings began to fade into the background. Although the Nazis were formally ruled by one king, in reality, each country was under the rule of its own lord. Therefore, if a war began, each country would have its own separate army. Therefore, people leaned not towards the Empress, but towards the Duke of Fez, since, as they saw it, he had more power. This is not like their ancient kingdom, and is different from Ranchea, which has long been powerful and influential. The lady understands that the economy of this country is based on the exchange of goods, not on sales. They also have decent food reserves, but after the harvest, there are times when food supplies dwindle sharply. People are forced to borrow from others, charging interest, and they must repay when the harvest season returns. The problem is not so much the fact of borrowing food or money for food, but rather the exorbitant interest rates. Yulia claims that she considers it cruel to force people to pay interest that is much greater than the debt itself. Her interlocutor replies that the lady is right and that it's good that people signed the petition and that she learned about it. The girl replies that this is true, but wonders what they would say if they were interrogated. They will simply say that they knew perfectly well what they were getting into and that no one asked them to take out a loan. The man replies that it would most likely be cold, and the heroine asks why they only think about themselves and how to fill their bellies. Of course they can't justify the people who borrowed money or those who gave it to them, but if they were on the verge of falling into eternal sleep due to hunger, did they have any other choice? It is obvious that they did this voluntarily, knowing what awaited them, and the girl claims that she thinks that there were no normal laws in Nasran from the very beginning. The man replies that he agrees with her, but the girl says that this is not about them. The kingdom of Nasran had only recently joined them, and was captured by chance and its close proximity to the Ranchian Empire. About 5 years have passed since their capture, and the names that the man answers, that yes, and according to the Ranchia law, the tax can be no more than 30%. The protagonist replies that this is true and understands that there's little Yulia can do in this situation. She should arrest the extortionist, but for that, she needs Cyril. The protagonist understands that Julia would most likely do just that. Let Cyril go after them personally. But the girl understands that he should not simply punish them, because most likely this is happening due to the fault of corrupt officials. And even if they are guided by the current law, they will still think until the very end that they will get away with it. And perhaps if the Empress speaks out personally, many will come to their senses. The girl asserts that she must look further into this issue. And Cyril asks if she wants to do everything herself. The girl responds by climbing up the stairs and asking if that's why he came to her. The man replies that the lady is indeed a very wise ruler, after which the main character asks why he is looking at her like that. Her interlocutor replies that the longer he talks to her, the more it seems that the lady is not herself. At this time, the main character thinks why he is so impudent and says that of course, for him, she is just a toy that can be given to people to play with. Although the lady also says that everything is not as bad as she thought, well then she turns to Cyril again. And she wonders if he is really checking her out now, and maybe it's time to stop. The man asks if this upsets her, and the woman replies, no, rather piques his curiosity, especially since once she passes this test, she can present evidence at any time, and he won't believe her anyway. After all, he doesn't like pointless work either. Cyril smiles at this and claims he understands. He also wants Her Majesty to trust him. The girl replies that this is good, but her interlocutor asks if she is okay. Julia asks what he is talking about. The man replies that even despite the problems with the Duke of Fez, she's too trusting to just up and leave the palace. Yulia asks why she can't do that. And her interlocutor asks how he knows, because maybe he plans to become the second Fez. But from such words, the main character only begins to laugh and thinks, is this a person who would want to commit treason? I wouldn't even talk about that. Yulia also insists that he won't be left there unattended, but the guy replies that she's wrong. The lady says there are people in the palace she can trust, and she really wants to believe him. The guy asks if she ever thought he might turn out to be a traitor. Yulia says that if she didn't trust anyone, she wouldn't be sitting there now, and Cyril assumes that's true. She says she understands what he's getting at, and then suggests that Cyril not be so hard on himself. After all, she trusts him, and if he were a traitor, he wouldn't be standing there. The guy is silent for a while after that. And then she tells Her Majesty that she knows what to expect from him. Yulia replies that it's her job to see right through people. Her interlocutor asserts that the lady is right. Most of the positions in the palace are filled by local citizens. But one of the most important positions went to a foreigner, Cyril. The lady thinks he can help people, but can she help him? The girl understands his feelings, and it is always difficult and awkward to be among strangers, and that is probably why she so rarely saw his smile. To be honest, she is glad that she saw his smile at all, and a little while later the girl finds herself on the street. The lady says it's decided, and she wants to go for a walk alone. At that moment, Justo and Felix scream out that they won't do anything. Yulia is a little surprised and realizes they haven't changed a bit. Justo claims the lady is going too far to get some fresh air, and he wonders why she's even entertaining the idea of going alone. Felix congratulates Her Majesty, saying he's right. He also believes someone should go with her. The protagonist realizes that Felix was following Justo on Thanksgiving. Not for Yulia herself, but specifically for Justo. The guy thought Justo wasn't doing his job well enough. Well, even if he had done it perfectly, she thinks that Felix's opinion of Justo would not have changed. Justo says that if they don't do anything, many will be outraged that the lady went alone. Felix replies that it's the tavern, and besides, Count Benes is a bit suspicious. Lately he has been treating her strangely, but the main character just shakes her head. She also claims that Cyril has put forward many worthy ideas. She knows they don't like it when she has a hard time, but they still have to understand her motivation, because it's important. Felix replies that of course, but suggests drinking away the events because they won't send her anywhere without a good escort. A little while later, the main character is in a carriage and realizes that she is sure that this did not happen in the novel. Before and after Julia ascended the throne, they often went out into nature because Julia doesn't like to sit within four walls. Afterwards, she went to war and, oddly enough, it was the quietest period in her life. A little while later, someone turns to Her Majesty and asks if she is now thinking about the past and Marcus. Julia is a little surprised and asks how he knew about it. Felix replies that whenever she remembers the past, including Marcus, her gaze takes on a special look. The girl asks if this is true, after which the guy is silent for a moment. Julia understands that this is interesting, because he and Julia are completely different, but their thoughts are similar in many ways, and it's funny. Well, she still thinks they still have different opinions about Justo. Felix turns to Her Majesty once again, and he wonders how she plans to punish Baron Shet. At this point, the Baron cries out, "Do they really mean to tell you that the Empress will soon be there?" One of the servants replies that yes, and that nothing can be done about it. Baron Shet asks why she needs to go there. His interlocutor replies that perhaps someone told her they have warm winters. The Baron asks what the butler is talking about, and he replies that he was told that they were going there to rest because they have beautiful forests and also magnificent winter landscapes. The Baron understands that this is acceptable, but still, the reason is strange and most likely not the issue. The Baron also wonders if this is unlikely, and his interlocutor asks what he is talking about. The man claims that he should remember because 2 months ago the Empress personally punished the Duke of Fez. Well, his interlocutor says the Baron and the Count had nothing to do with it. The man replies that this is true, but something feels off. Another person tells him not to worry too much about this, because there are people much worse than him. The man replies that, of course, Feza was punished simply at the whim of the Empress. His interlocutor replies that this is true, because everyone knows how powerful she is. They say she's even a little crazy. The Baron replies, yes, and asks if the boy thinks it's true. Slovo replies that she rose in a rather short time. And does he really think a thoughtless person could do such a thing? This sounds like a ridiculous rumor from the capital. Oberon says that all these people who speak like this swear allegiance to the Empress. The man also understands that the Duke said he had assigned his man to Her Majesty. For him, this is a good opportunity to present himself as Empress in the best possible light. Well, then he thinks that if something goes wrong, and he suffers the same fate as Feza, the Empress would have problems if he fled abroad. But even despite his competence, Envid is a count, but he is only a baron, and his status does not really suit him. He needs to cast aside all doubts, otherwise he will screw up, and now is the right time to raise his status. At that moment, the man turns to the butler and tells him to clean the entire castle and also decorate the room in which the Empress will stay and let him do everything in the best possible way, to which he agrees. The Baron also tells him not to worry about the cost because his money will arrive soon. He also tells the butler to deliver a secret message to Count Edvind. He also exaggerates the reason for the Empress's visit, to which the butler agrees. The kingdom of Nosran used to be a very cold place with dry air in the north of the continent. Because of this, agriculture didn't develop and there was a shortage of food. The girl wonders if this is the main reason, since the faces of the people you meet in Nosran are all unhappy. The girl wondered if they still needed food. 4 days after leaving the imperial capital, the lady finally arrived in Shet. And when the girl gets out of the carriage, the Baron immediately bows and says that Her Majesty has visited such a wretched place, so it is a great honor for him. The main character replies that no, and she is grateful to him for agreeing to accept her despite such a sudden visit. The man replies that, of course, the Empress herself visited them, and his reputation in society will increase. Julia replies that, as he probably knows, after she ascended the throne, a bunch of things fell on her. Her interlocutor replies that, of course, he understands, Your Majesty, and the girl says that Shet's winter landscape is truly beautiful. The girl also claims that she had previously heard a lot about it, saying that the trees in these parts are selling, that they smell wonderful, To which the Baron replies that they are telling the truth and, of course, this is their pride. The man immediately smiles and claims that the room they prepared for her is decorated with these trees. The main character replies that it's magnificent. The Baron also says that their land is famous not only for its trees but also for its stones. Until they become smooth and shiny, then the main character stops listening to the Baron and thinks about the castle that she sees in front of her. The girl understands that it is too big and there is so much tasteless luxury that it becomes disgusting. But on the other hand, the girl says that he is quite good, and the Baron immediately asks if she likes him, to which the lady replies that she does, after which he suggests going inside. When they enter, Julia thinks that people there are plunging into eternal sleep from hunger, and this idiot is living in luxury. The Baron says it's quite warm inside compared to the outside temperature. Since the castle is many years old, great care was taken during the restoration to prevent cold from penetrating. The man also says that he had a premonition that someone high-ranking would visit them, but then he wonders if he was talking too much. It seems that the Empress is not very concerned about his arrival, and if she wanted to convict him of crimes, she would not have come in person, after which the man suggests going to the dining room. A little while later, he asks Her Majesty to allow him to personally prepare dinner and alcohol, to which the lady replies that, of course, and she has no objection. After which, the girl looks around the room and also turns to Felix. She asks if he can find out where there are so many jewels, to which the guy replies that, of course, and it is a great honor for him. Then the main character says that she entrusts this to him, and also let him make sure that the Baron does not notice this. Julia understands that there is clearly something fishy there, and she must sort it out. The girl also understands that even after the Duke of Fez was executed, they think that they will get away with everything. At that moment, the Baron comes out from around the corner and turns to Her Majesty and asks about a glass of wine before bed. The girl smiles and replies that it sounds good. A little while later, the lady looks at the wine in front of her. And he also understands that it's insanely expensive. This wine is called Aprido, and last year they only released 10 bottles. The girl understands that it is quite difficult to get it, and she has come across this name a couple of times in the novel. Everyone who came to Yulia with this wine turned out to be schemers and bribe takers, so the girl wonders whether it can be considered some kind of sign of corruption. The Baron at this time says that for such a high-ranking person as she, only valuable and rare drinks should be offered. The main character only smiles in response and says that although she has already tried this variety several times, its interesting feature is that the taste is always different. The man tells Her Majesty that this is absolutely true, because few people know about this feature of Aprido wine. The main character understands that with these words, he's on the one hand praising Yulia's knowledge, and on the other, trying to inflate his own value. This exclusive variety is currently available only to him, and only the Empress is worthy of it. The girl wonders if he really wants to show off in front of her like this. She also thinks the old Yulia wouldn't have noticed the trick. She would have simply savored it like dinner. 2 years ago, Yulia simply adored those who favored her and brazenly flattered her. But then, when the main character drinks the wine, she is surprised by the taste and realizes that she was almost surprised out loud. Julia, looking at the wine, wonders why this aroma is so delightful, and if you think about it, it's not just a sign of corruption, but a wonderful drink that fills her from within. The lady says that compared to other wines, this variety has a special appeal, to which the Baron replies that this is absolutely true. The girl realizes she's saying this because something is clouding her mind. It's a little unnerving, but quite pleasant. Yulia also understands that this wine possesses special powers. The Baron asserts that the lady truly has an excellent knowledge of wine. The girl immediately sets down her glass and insists that this isn't enough to justify any praise, after which she stares intently at the agitated Baron. Then she turns away and says that maybe she should give him some kind of reward or a promotion. The man asks if she is joking, to which the lady replies that she is not joking at all, and since he treated her to such a wonderful wine, then that is fine. Yusto, somewhat agitated, addresses Her Majesty. but the girl merely glares at him and claims he's ruining her pleasure. The lady also sets down her glass with a loud thud. The Baron understands that she doesn't seem to have the best relationship with Duke Marcus. He was nervous when he learned he would be accompanying her. But now he thinks she brought him because she had no other choice. His plan would fall apart if anyone interfered, so he needed to win her favor. The man also turns to the maid and orders her to bring them food. A short time later, the servants lay out various dishes, and the defense addresses Her Majesty. And he says that she came there to relax, after which he asks if she will really allow her mood to be ruined. The girl replies that she can't believe she took such a cruel man with her. He doesn't understand that she's so tired from state affairs, and the girl asks why he won't let her rest. The Baron says the lady is right, as always, and even wiser than he thought. The girl, smiling, asks if that's really true, to which he replies, "Yes, she is a wonderful person and ruler. Even if someone treats her inappropriately, doesn't she forgive them with just a warning?" Yulia replies that this is true because many people in the capital are spreading rumors about her, but she doesn't even have time to breathe because she's all in business. The man says that they only witnessed the time of her reign and do not even know how cruel other rulers were who secretly supported corruption. The girl claims that he is telling the truth, after which she turns to Baron Shett and states that she thinks it would be a terrible omission not to have a man like him with her. The lady also asks if he thinks so. The man, meanwhile, wonders if the Empress has truly recognized him or if this is a trick. He understands that he can't agree so quickly, since she's only there for a short time, and today is only the first day of her arrival. If he immediately agrees with her, the lady will think he was just waiting for this, and that will be humiliating. After which, the man says that their neighborhood is under her control, just like he is. He also believes that managing this territory is very important, so he should care for it with all his heart. The Baron also wonders if he is a good liar. And the main character, with a smile on her face, says that the Baron is so modest and also understands that it seems like everything is going according to plan. The man says Her Majesty is flattering him, but she's not. Her presence makes the food taste even better. After this, the main character says that yes, and these guys, although they follow her all the time, do not understand what she feels. The man says he's sure Duke Marcus is simply looking out for her safety. The Baron also reflects that this young man seems loyal to the Empress. He also thinks that he will not be able to tell something about her, after which the man thinks whether he can use this to his advantage. Meanwhile, the main character claims she enjoyed the night, and her companion claims it's a great honor for him. The man realizes that the Duke of Fez was clearly executed for another reason, because when he flatters the lady, she only rejoices. And when they try to reason with her, she gets angry at her companions. Whatever the case, he thinks the lady is quite intelligent. At that very moment, the Baron hears the glass shatter into pieces. And the main character at this time screams when this guy will stop criticizing all her actions. The lady turns to her companions and asks if they have forgotten how tired she was working every day, and it seems that out of spite, they do not allow her to rest. The two guys are silent at this time, defensively thinking about the glass, because the glass master made it especially for him, and it was exclusive. After which the man thinks, okay, he'll soon be able to afford a dozen such glasses. The most important thing is that the Empress favors him, after which the man turns to her and says that, if Her Majesty allows it, he would like to hold a ball in 3 days. Yulia asks if this is true, to which the man replies that, yes, he heard that social events have already begun in the capital. Yulia just sighs and insists they just like to make noise. Baron Datova is a little surprised, then realizes he's been told Letty always loved points. After which, the man says they only invited Count Edvin's nobles, so the event promises to be very pleasant and relaxing. Yulia then reflects on her conversation partner, realizing that he seems to have caught her interest. If the Empress herself attends his ball, Count Envid's jaw will simply drop with envy, after which the man asks what Her Majesty will say. The woman merely smiles in response, takes another sip of wine, and declares that it's not a bad idea. It would be nice to kick off the ball season in his area. The Baron replies that this is a great honor for him and he will prepare everything in the best possible way. he also realizes that he can picture Edvin's face. Barun also says that he heard the Empress loves hunting, but the main character doesn't even listen to him and looks at one of her charges. The man wonders if she's still worried about these two, then says that the Sheta Mountains are famous for their winter beauty. He also asks if the lady would like to go hunting and admire the winter views. The girl then pays attention to him, and the man says that he heard that the lady looks great when she wields a sword or a bow. After which, he asks to see it with his own eyes. Julia considers it for a moment and wonders if he really wants to see it that badly. The Baron realizes she seems to have taken the bait, but at that moment, Justo addresses Her Majesty. And he says that swinging a sword at such a difficult time isn't the best idea. But at that very moment, the girl screams at Justo to shut up, and then she plunges the knife right into the center of the plate. The girl wonders if he is there just to support her. But all they do is criticize her, and it reaches the point of absurdity. The Empress immediately tells the Baron that she agrees and asks how she can ignore his proposal. The man immediately says it's an honor. Julia insists she's a little tired and will go and rest. The Baron apologizes to Her Majesty for exhausting her, but the people say it's not worth it, since she was interested in it herself. The Baron understands that, as he thought, the excitement was empty and the lady is so drunk that she can barely stand on her feet. At the same moment, he calls one of the maids to him and tells them to take the Empress to her chambers, to which the girl agrees. She also tells Her Majesty where to go. But at that moment, the Baron remembers something and claims he has prepared a special gift for Her Majesty. He also hopes she'll enjoy this wonderful evening at Sheta. She asks if he's talking about a gift, and that's quite interesting. As the main character walks down the corridor, she realizes that it was tiring. Felix immediately turns to Her Majesty and asks if she is okay. But the girl shows him to be quieter because the maid is walking ahead, after which the guy closes his mouth. A little while later, they reach the guest room, and Felix wishes Her Majesty a good rest. At this time, the maid turns to the Duke and claims that he can use the room opposite. Well, the brunette replies that he must be near the Empress to protect her, and the girl replies that this is true. The main character, looking at the maid, thinks what is wrong with her and why she is reacting this way. But a little while later, the main character realizes why she sees a whole harem of young men in front of her. Julia watches in shock and realizes that the Duke of Fez has demonstrated his loyalty by sending handsome men to the Empress. The girl thinks she could go crazy like this, and she has no idea what to do, not to mention that this is the first time something like this has happened in her life. The lady realizes she was only trying to pretend to be a fool, not actually being one. But when the girl turns her attention to Justo, she sees that he's enraged. The girl immediately turns to him, and the boy comes to his senses. He immediately asks Her Majesty what will happen if the residents find out about this, and what she will do then. Julia wonders if he really decided to help her out. But then the girl notices the maids looking at them. The girl thinks that a lot of people are watching this, and if she now goes against Justo's words, they will be able to confirm the rumors that they are in a bad relationship. At that moment, the main character pushes the guy's hand away and asks how many more times he will repeat about these residents, because it already irritates her. Justo is shocked by such words, and the main character says in her thoughts that this is just a pretense, and they decided on this. After which silence hangs between them and the main character sighs, after which she once again turns to Justo and asks since when she gave him the right to contradict her. After the guy once again addresses Her Majesty, the girl pushes him out of the room and screams at him not to ruin her evening. Julia apologizes to Justo in her thoughts, and when the guy appears outside, the maid immediately disperses. The main character, left in the room with the guys sent by Baron Shet, thinks about what to do now. Julia realizes she doesn't even want to touch them. Afterward, she thinks about Fez and Baron Shet and thinks she'd give them a good beating. The girl also looks at the guys and wonders what to do with them. Then the lady turns around and realizes she was hoping for a quiet evening. The lady sees whiskey on one of the shelves and realizes that since becoming Julia, Thor has decided she won't drink a drop of whiskey. After all, Baron Shet knows how to drink. During dinner, he made her drain so many glasses that her internal organs are now having a hard time. The bottle of whiskey says it has a high alcohol content, and the girl understands that one could even say that he is trying to put her into eternal sleep. The lady understands that she does not want to use this method, but since this is the situation, isn't it the only one? The lady swore never to do this, especially while she worked at the company. While she didn't strictly force anyone to drink at work, as her boss did, she suffered greatly because of Director Lee. One day, the man was getting the newcomers drunk again. The main character realizes she hadn't broken this rule before him. Today, she'll have to break the vow she's kept for 8 years. The lady immediately puts the bottle back on the table and turns to the boys. The girl asks if it's boring to just spend the night like this. She also says that earning someone's touch on her body isn't easy. In her mind, the girl realizes she can't believe she said that. After which, the girl offers to play a game with her. The guy asks what kind, and the main character replies that she won't make them do anything difficult. It's just a game to see who's the best at drinking. One of them asks what they should do, and the other replies that they shouldn't drink. The Empress says that if they win, they'd better get a bigger reward. The girl also understands that it looks like they won't be able to move much, and that's good. She also thinks she can win even after drinking wine and can force others to drink much more than her. This is only possible if she's the boss, and it's a truly dirty method. KBZ looks at the glasses and realizes that she's got more iceberg than rocks. Yulia also realizes that she never thought she'd do the disgusting things bad bosses do. Then the lady suggests starting with the first glass. A short while later, all 4 guys are lying in bed, fast asleep. The protagonist realizes that this blanket doesn't cover everything it should. She's lucky they only needed 1 glass to fall asleep. She thought it would be more difficult. The girl also thinks about Chet's harrow and realizes it's probably best to tell him she had a blast. She also needs to find out why he sent men who don't even know how to drink properly. That's too much. But what worries her more is Yusto. The girl is sure that he realized that she was pretending, but his facial expression really worries her. When a lady puts her hand to the door, she understands that someone is there, and she wonders if it is Yusto. The main character quietly opens the door and, when she sees the guy, asks if he's tired yet. Yusto says that if he doesn't mind, they can go for a walk. Felix writes something down at this time and realizes that this is what he did with his dirty money. The guy doesn't even notice how he pushes the glass off the table, and when he sees the spilled water, he realizes that he's upset. A little while later, the main character heads out in a carriage and says that as long as she acts like a spoiled empress, it will be suspicious if she allows both of them to stay near her, even for the sake of simple supervision, as they call it. So one of them can. But before the lady can finish speaking, Felix cries out that he will do it. Yusto immediately replies that no, and he should do it. The main character then merely sighs and suggests they play rock, paper, scissors. Felix immediately replies that they can't solve it that way, and the main character asks why they don't consider this simple and effective method. The girl also tells them to do it faster, because they'll be arriving soon. Now the red-haired guy is clutching a pen and wondering why he chose scissors. How can you not watch Duke Marcus? He is the one who usually starts with a stone, and apparently he really doesn't like being predictable. A little while later, the main character looks around the corner and says that their security is too weak. Julia understands that she certainly wanted to come there, but she didn't expect to see such a beautiful sight. The lady also wonders if the castle was built there for this view. At the same moment, Yusto says that even he wants to pretend to be spoiled next to Her Majesty. The girl says that then the Baron will definitely understand that something is wrong, and the guy only remains silent in response to this, and the main character thinks that this is quite sweet. Julia understands that he is tall and not at all graceful, but still acts sweetly when she is jealous. The girl wonders if the real Julia didn't understand anything when everything was so obvious. The main character tells Yusto that she hopes he's not too worried. The girl realizes that perhaps this is only obvious to her because she read the novella. The girl also tells Yusto that, in fact, she made them all fall asleep, and he understood that she was pretending. Julia says that she knows that over the past 2 years, she has done a lot of suspicious things. But now she is actually normal. The guy then touches the Empress's finger and claims that he understands everything, just looking at her. But he's very upset that she has to do something she doesn't want. Julia understands she didn't think he'd do something like that, and Yusto is a sweet, yet sensible man whom the Empress can always rely on. The girl realizes that he seems so naive at this moment, and her heart hurts. At this time, he said that the lady only needed to say the word, and he would do everything she wanted. The main character thinks about this and then realizes that he is an adult and there is no need to worry about him, but he says such strange things. The lady immediately asserts that he shouldn't say that, and when the guy wants to say something else, the girl replies that she knows, because he really said what he thought. The main character understands that Yusto never used others like Baron Shet. Instead, he achieved his position by force. But the Julia he worked so hard for wasn't her. The girl says that his words are so sweet that one can easily get drunk from them, after which the lady hands him an apple and understands that therefore she will become the ideal empress who fits the image of Julia and created by Yusto and others. However, the lady claims that as the ruler of the kingdom, she cannot think only about herself, so serving the people is her duty. Julia understands that she doesn't really like it, but until the end of her life, her duty will be to maintain the image of the empress, and nothing can be done about it if this is her destiny. The girl also notices that Yusto's eyes are watering, and she feels a little sorry for him. She wonders how much longer he'll surprise her. When the girl moves on, the guy realizes she's back to her old self. For the past 2 years, he thought his feelings had faded and thought he'd be happy just being around her. But now he doesn't understand why he was so upset earlier, because he was sure that all he needed was for Her Majesty to return to her previous state. He doesn't know why he has now become so greedy and claims that he understood the lady. The main character, with a smile on her face, replies that, of course, this does not mean that he will rest for the rest of his life. The guy replies that yes, and the girl realizes that now she understands a little more why Julia trusted Yusto so much. He's an honest man who doesn't hide his emotions. There were many similar quotes about Navalny, but this one feels different. A little while later, the protagonist looks out the window and thinks what a relief it is, since they almost fell through. The girl realizes she managed to sneak back in before anyone noticed her disappearance. Well, as soon as the lady is about to climb into the window, she hears someone screaming at her. It turns out it's Felix, and when the main character sees him, her heart skips a beat. She asks him what he's doing there at this hour, since it's still too early and the sun hasn't even risen yet. Well, when the guy doesn't answer, the main character turns to him again. Felix immediately says that this cannot be, and could the lady really have been out for a walk with Duke Marcus all this time? The sad guy turns to Her Majesty, and the main character, for some reason, feels guilty, and says that she simply drank too much in the evening. Felix asks if that's really true, but she didn't drink that much during dinner. Julia wants to tell what happened after this room, but she understands that if Felix knows what happened yesterday, everything will get out of control. After the past couple of months, she clearly understood why Felix was so fanatical about Yulia. When she read the novel, she wondered how he could be called a fanatic. He's just in love, and it's so sweet. But now she's thinking how she wants to yell at her former self. Yulia alone, and so the others were irrelevant. Lady realizes she should have realized this sooner, and now she's even blurted out too much. The guy says that, of course, he hopes the lady didn't have a drink with Duke Marcus last night. The main character replies that, of course, she didn't, and realizes she feels herself becoming less and less convincing. At this time, the guy tells Her Majesty that he knows that she has been trying to limit her alcohol consumption lately, and that means there is a reason why she is not telling the truth. The guy also asks if there's something Duke Marcus is allowed to know but not him. Julia understands that this look is truly difficult to resist, but in truth, nothing has happened. And besides, she's sleepy. The girl says that this Baron Shet has prepared a very useless gift for her, and the guy asks what it is about. The main character understands that the atmosphere has changed, and she cannot even imagine what he was thinking about. At this time, Felix asks if she is really saying that Duke Marcus was next to her but did nothing and allowed this to happen. Yusto, in response to this, only remains silent, and Felix claims that he cannot believe it, and that is why he should have guarded Her Majesty and not Yusto. The main character puts her hand on Felix's shoulder and realizes that she can't just take Yusto's side. The girl turns to the guy and realizes that, thank God, she's already spent enough time there and knows how to calm him down. When Felix is angry, there's a certain chill around him, even in summer. Yulia said that she had a request, and the guy at that very moment, with a smile on his face, answered that he was listening carefully. The main character is surprised and thinks that she was lucky that Marcus was next to her last night, because if she were with Felix, he would have written a report about it without missing a single detail. The main character understands that the time has come to use Felix's abilities, and says that she needs him to remove those men who knocked out everything in her room and their things. The boy immediately looks at her in bewilderment and asks what Her Majesty said. The girl replies that when she arrived, they were already in her room. At that very moment, Felix cries out, "Does Yusto really mean to say that they all barged in alone and he did nothing?" The boy realizes he left Her Majesty alone in such a situation. And the main character realizes that he's probably wondering how Yusto could have allowed this to happen. The young man immediately sighs and realizes that, although he now knows he has no equal in serving Her Majesty, the main character thinks he's now considering that he is, after all, Her Majesty's best assistant, after which the young man says he'll do it right away. A short time later, he's already screaming at them. How dare they dishonor Her Majesty's gaze with their indecent appearance? Yusto watches all this silently, after which the main character turns to him and says that Felix accused him of nothing. The girl understands that when she worked in the company, such accusations were the worst, and she truly regrets it. The brunette replies that everything is fine and it doesn't matter what Felix says, because the words of a reckless fanatic cannot influence him. The main character looks at his trembling hand and understands that he never ignored an insult directed at him. Yusto kept silent only because she was there, and, like Felix, he doesn't show his tender side to anyone except Yulia. Felix at this time says that Her Majesty was too kind, and these disgusting people should be thrown from the nearest tree. Well, the main character replies that it's impossible, and yet they are people of her empire. Phoenix, looking at the lady, only becomes embarrassed and exclaims that now the place looks neat and tidy, his work is finished. The young man asks if he doesn't help Her Highness more than anyone else. A short time later, someone cries out to Her Majesty and the ruler of the empire, and the protagonist wonders what the hell is going on. A few hours before dawn, thanks to the Baron, these men had gathered there just as she was falling asleep. After which, she thought, she could spend some time with Felix and relax. At that very moment, someone asks Her Majesty if she'd like to go to the hunting grounds, and the main character wonders if he doesn't realize he's come at the wrong time. But still, the previous Julia would have greeted this idea with a smile, and the girl, a little while later, cries out that she will wait for him. The man replies that she is great again. They were just waiting for Her Majesty to finish preparing, and they will do everything they can to make her comfortable. Yulia realizes his voice is already ringing in her ears. The man immediately offers to send someone to revive the wagon, which is already there and ready to go. A little while later, the main character looks at the carriage and realizes that it is too luxurious. The girl understands that this guy simply has a talent for overdoing it, and she can't do anything if she wants to carry out her plan. Well, the lady thinks that everything is getting out of control, and so she got off the cart that Baron Shet brought. The moment the lady's footsteps on the ground, the servants immediately cry out in greeting to Her Majesty. The main character wonders if this is really a hunting ground or if she misunderstood something. The lady thinks that this is not the Imperial Palace, but there is even a red carpet and men in tailcoats. At that moment, the girl smiles and thinks that this is not bad, because now she has one more proof of how impudent nobles throw money around. The lady understands that she needs to put on at least some kind of smile, and says that she sees that they have prepared a reception for her. The man replies that this is nothing compared to the honor of seeing the beautiful face of Her Majesty the Empress. Well, when the main character doesn't respond, The man doesn't notice, thinking she must be so surprised she's speechless. The higher the position, the more surprised they are by such things. At this time, Julia asks them to raise their heads because she wants to see their faces. At that very moment, they do just that, and the main character realizes that they are doing all this to get her approval. The man at the same time says that they were all glad when they had the chance to accompany Her Majesty. The main character asks if this is true, because she couldn't even think about it. The girl also says that if there are those in Edvin's alliance who want to be her ally, she would have found out about it earlier. The main character thinks she learned this from Cyril. The boy told Her Majesty that the nobles, led by Baron Shet, were there to inform her. They're not getting along with Count Edwin. Now the man says it's a bit late, and Her Majesty still has much work to do. He also turns to the other aristocrats and says that it is their honor to meet her in Baron Shet's region. At the same moment, one of them tells Her Majesty that this is true, and his colleague claims that they are very pleased that they can be of use to her. Well then, one of them turns to Her Majesty and asks if she would like to take a look at what they have prepared, after which they show the best breeds of hounds for tomorrow's hunt. Not to mention the talented shepherds. They'd also heard that Her Majesty favored the bow, so they brought a weapon made by a local craftsman. One of them claims they hope the lady will also like the black sword he's prepared. The main character realizes that what's arrived is a circus of people speaking only for themselves, and there's not a shred of cohesion among them. The lady also looks at the Baron and thinks, what a magnificent expression he has on his face. Well, she's glad that these scammers gathered in one place, because now this whole idea doesn't seem so useless. One of the aristocrats says, these are hunting grounds. Well, then one of them says he didn't even think of that at first, and the other echoes his idea, adding that it must have been tiring to travel so far. Yulia realizes that the Empress's icon isn't so bad after all. At that moment, the Baron turns to the lady with a beaming smile and says that they should take a break. The girl immediately says that, as expected, it was he who noticed her distress. Yulia realizes that this so-called alliance is a complete disaster. A little while later, the girl is already sitting on the sofa and asks the Baron if there is anything else he should tell her. The man immediately asks how she found out, and the main character realizes that he has been running back and forth since early morning, and even now he is anxious. Although she certainly knows the reason, the girl asks how she can't know about the problems. She has the body of a loyal subordinate whom she values. He shouldn't hold back. Let him speak before she does. The man tells Her Majesty that, to tell the truth, he was a little worried. After all, it seems she didn't like the men he sent last night, and the main character wonders why he thought so. The Baron replies that he heard the lady had driven them away this morning, and when he found out, he thought he had prepared a low-grade gift for her. The main character is only angry about this and thinks that she cannot believe that he makes people into grades. The girl asks how he could think that, and then the man asks what he should do. The girl then turns to the Baron and claims that in fact, many sneaky people have pestered her. After all this, she thought it would be great to play all night long. The Baron is immediately happy, and the main character asks where he found such sweet and naive boys. Julia says that she wants to give him a worthy reward, looking at how he tries to please her. As far as he knows, there are no useful people around her. The Baron understands that they irritate the Empress even more than he thought, and especially since she tells him so personally. It seems that if he continues to grow in behavior, the Empress will take him under her wing. The main character understands that these are all petty tricks that everyone uses. She has been leading him by the nose for a long time, but the Baron still hasn't taken the bait, and it turns out that he's not such a simpleton. But one cannot give him much time to think, after which the main character cries out that the Empress expressed her trust in him. And then she even asks if he really doesn't have the head to understand her, to which the man replies that this is not true at all, and that Her Majesty has so many worries that he didn't want to bother her once again. The girl then asks if she didn't say that she was interested in this, and that she wanted to know. Such nice men are a rarity these days, and the Baron asks if this is true. The girl replies that, of course, The men the Duke of Fez brought to her were not bad, but Yulia realizes that she truly is acting like a complete piece of trash. The Baron says that, to be honest, it was just a coincidence that these men suited her preferences. The girl claims that she doesn't like it when words are manipulated, and the Baron claims that these men called for it themselves. They said they wanted to curry favor with the Empress. The main character immediately asks joyfully if that's really true, but thinks to herself, "How can you possibly think of this? This is madness." The man insists he too thought this would be an excellent opportunity for them to discover Her Majesty's grace. The girl asks if he's talking about cuteness and wonders what that means. The Baron replies that they owe her a huge debt. A little while ago, he told these guys that he called them today because he needed people willing to keep the Empress company in the evening, and everyone the Empress is interested in will be able to start a new life. The man also says that since the Empress will give them all a new life, he will forget the debts of anyone who agrees. Now the Baron claims they happily accepted the offer. And the main character thinks he really is trash. A few minutes later, the girl is back in her tent. She looks at the mountain of animals and realizes that it looks like Yulia liked hunting, but she's not having fun at all. Instead of hunting, everyone was chasing her to get attention by throwing mud at others, and even children do it. But thanks to this, the hunt wasn't in vain. All they did was frame others. But thanks to their contribution, she will be able to deal with other corrupted aristocrats. At this time, Felix enters the tent and tells Her Majesty that he has returned from the investigation. The main character asks if he has already found out what she asked for, to which the guys answer that yes, and as Her Majesty expected. The Baron's entire current income is black money. Even during the castle's reconstruction, he drove his workers into debt, and after all that, he paid paltry wages. Julia understands that he has already done quite a lot of bad things, and Felix asks if this is true. After all, if that's the case, then she shouldn't have anything to do with him anymore, and she can simply get rid of the Baron. The main character thinks that, as Felix said, she can punish Boron with so much evidence. But if she does this, then other corrupt officials will have time to hide. After which, the main character asks him to wait a little, and also asks if he told Cyril what she asked for. The guy says sure, and he told him to prepare a report by tomorrow evening. The girl says that's great and then suggests setting the next trap, to which the guy agrees. A little while later, the Baron asks if the lady is going out into the city. The girl asks why he is so surprised, to which the man replies that, no, it's just cold outside. The main character says that she has nothing to worry about because he has prepared an excellent carriage for her. But the man also says that now there are no holidays in the city, after which the main games do not appeal to the Baron. And he asks if the possibility of her walking around the city frightens him. The Baron immediately replies that nothing of the sort. But he understands that the situation is getting out of control, because why would she go there so suddenly? Yulia understands that there were several reasons why the Baron insisted on Yulia visiting his hunting grounds. The main reason was to gather the nobles and let them show you off. But he also did this so that the Empress would not see the city, because these people were too rebellious. And many don't know their place. He told them that working for the Empress would earn them half as much, but if they let her see the deplorable state of their city, everything would be taken from them. And yet he even pretended to be putting himself in harm's way and acted as if he cared about them. Count Edvin sold one of Europe's finest citizens, and in comparison, he's far more caring. The man also wonders who else could do this besides him. They knew exactly how much and when they needed to pay, and they would still borrow. He didn't even like it when they cried because of the huge taxes, so the Empress shouldn't be upset when she sees all this. Of course, he won't be punished for such a trifle, especially after such a luxurious trip to the hunting grounds. At this time, the main character is wondering how much longer he plans to make her wait. And the man replies that he is simply worried that the city is too unremarkable for any kind of excursion. Julia says that it is possible, but she wanted to look at him after he told her that story. The man asks which one, and the lady replies that it was his words that everyone there considers her a kind empress. The Baron is immediately puzzled by why the lady remembered that particular part. He also wonders what if she finds out no one adores her, and about how he forced those men to go. The girl immediately asks what's going on and if he's really leading her on. The Empress looks at him furiously. The Baron understands that such a scenario is worse than execution. He also claims that, as far as she knows, there have been sneaky people following them lately. Some residents don't really know about her yet, so they're spreading stupid rumors. Yulia says that she understands, and it's a pity that there are few like him, but she is sure that he has already told about her greatness. The man is immediately surprised, and the main character says that when they arrive in the city, she hopes to hear only praise. So she can't wait to go, and the man wonders if she really wants such trivial things, and he doesn't think that's the only reason. But then he realizes that if that's all she cares about, then he can simply appease her. In this case, the man asks to give him a little time until tomorrow to inform the residents and prepare, to which the girl agrees. And he claims he'll wait. A little while later, the Baron is in her office, wondering if she's really exposed him. It's impossible, isn't it? He probably misunderstood something, and it's impossible that the Empress would come to such a remote place for the sake of performances. She could simply give an order from the capital, after which the man screams to the butler. A servant immediately enters the room and asks if his master has summoned him. The man replies that Her Majesty plans to see the city tomorrow. The butler then asks if this is really true, and his master claims that it is so difficult to fulfill all her whims. The servant says that it will be quite noisy there because recently he was just going to see people, Tanya, and as a result he had to listen to all the insults. After this, the Baron says what a fool he is and let him act if he doesn't want to lose his title. The man then smiles, and his interlocutor asserts that Her Majesty is pleased with his hospitality and that he has served his family for a long time. The butler asks if he really means to say that he will give him a bonus, and his master asks if he really thought that he was such a terrible employer. The servant immediately says that his master seems to see right through him and asks for forgiveness for his rudeness. After which he says that he will take care of this and that Her Majesty's visit tomorrow will be flawless. The Baron claims that he hopes for this and, to be honest, understands that he trusts him more than anyone else. The man replies that, of course, and therefore asks not to forget his promise. The Baron says there's nothing to say, since its inhabitants aren't constantly immersed in eternal sleep or enslaved. The butler replies that this is true, since his lord is nothing like Count Envid. The man then looks at the letter and realizes it's all nonsense. The next day, the protagonist is outside and says the weather is just perfect. The Baron says that it seems that nature itself is happy with the appearance of Her Majesty on the main character. With a smile on his face, he says what pleasant words these are. The man thanks Her Majesty and claims that he simply said what he felt, and the girl says how sweet it is. But then he says okay, and they leave. A little while later, the Baron asks if anyone is traveling with a lady today. The girl gets into the carriage and says that her assistants will only get in the way, so it's better to go without them. Then the man says that he will help her with all his might, and the main character says that this is great because they already ruin everything they touch. Yulia understands that this somewhat contradicts the image of an empress who does whatever she pleases, and especially since there are things she has commissioned them to do. The lady also understands that their work will be easier while the barons are out of the castle. Well, what's more important is that the investigation is coming to an end, and the lady, with a smile on her face, understands that yesterday the baron even mocked the residents, and this is even worse than expected. A little while ago, Felix was saying what an idiot this baron is. Lady understands that she thought he would at least stop bullying the residents, but judging by Felix's words, who was keeping an eye on the baron? His butler took the villagers hostage and brutally beat them. Felix said that as soon as the lady gave the order, he would make the baron pay for everything, and the main character realizes that, of course, she immediately wanted to give the order, but instead, she told him to punish the butler. When she saw the servant in the morning, she realized he had hardly slept that night. Meanwhile, the girl also noted that the roads were clean, and the raven said he had worked hard to get everything in order for Her Majesty. He also claimed that it was all done by volunteers. After all, the locals respect her so much. The girl comments on how kind the locals are and realizes that the spoiled empress's rants will never stop. Then they pass by, where people immediately shout out greetings to Her Majesty. The main character understands that everyone is saying they wish her well, but there's no optimism in their voices, like clapping for the boss at karaoke. But the girl realizes things are even worse now, because these people were threatened with eternal sleep. The Baron was saying he was ashamed because there was still much to be done, but the girl replied that it was enough, because there were so many wonderful people there. At that very moment, someone knocked on the carriage door to greet Her Majesty, but at the same moment, the others led him away. The main character asks what's wrong with him, and the Baron says he's very greedy. The main character asks if this attack is really causing her thoughts to change, if he's really talking about himself. The man says it doesn't matter how they treat him, but this guy only remembers the bad and is simply incorrigible. The man says that last spring he saved him from falling into eternal sleep from hunger. But this guy does not appreciate his kindness at all. And the main character asks if this is true. Answer: if so, then he is a very ungrateful person, and maybe he should be punished. The Baron immediately says that Her Majesty doesn't need to worry about such trifles. He's the only one to blame for this with his inattention. Yulia replies that it's not his fault and that she's certain this guy doesn't know his place. The man thanks Her Majesty for her words. The main character realizes that it must have been this guy who sent the petition, since no one was willing to say a word right now. He took such a risk, and it's the same as sending the petition. The Baron addresses Her Majesty and says the ball is tomorrow. The girl replies that of course she liked everything he showed her, so she is looking forward to the ball, after which the man says that they have agreed. He also hopes that Her Majesty will have a wonderful time. The girl responds with silence and then insists that he said he invited Count Edvind and other nobles. The man replies that this is true, but the main character sighs and says that she'll finally see this Edvind's face. The Baron asks if he really wants to see him, but the girl replies no, and she's simply outraged because why didn't the Count visit her when she arrived? Her interlocutor assumes it's because he's busy. The man understands that no matter what a person's title, they cannot come to the castle without the local ruler's approval. They ignored his offer and, of course, regretted it, after which they began asking for it themselves, so now he will ignore them. Meanwhile, the main character asks if there's anything more important to her than her, and the Baron, with an icy expression, asks if he'll definitely show up for tomorrow's ball. The girl claims that other aristocrats are criticizing Edvind, after which the Baron asks what Her Majesty is talking about. The girl realizes he's pretending so well, and then says the Baron is a good actor, because she's heard the Count is having a hard time as a vassal. The man asks what he means, because as long as he has his estate, he can handle anything. The lady commented on his incredible patience and wondered how he would justify his treatment of his vassals. The Baron then told Her Majesty that he was, in fact, a count. He then began to recount the Count's misdeeds and how poorly he treated his vassals. The man claimed that the Viscount was making things difficult for everyone because he was completely incompetent and inept. The Baron even dared to say that Edwin was unworthy of being an earl, and he had indeed revealed everything, not even realizing he was digging his own grave. But he still slanders his master, and the girl can't believe he thinks such actions will be appreciated. This is the most obvious proof that relations between families in this area have deteriorated significantly, so now she's eager to turn everything upside down. A short time later, the protagonist heads to her room, where someone addresses her. It turns out to be Justo, and the protagonist asks what he found out. He replies that everything was exactly as she expected. The protagonist sighs, and he picks up the papers and begins to read them. Justo watches her silently and realizes that he once again feels like she's an empress, every decision he's willing to support. He lost her once, and when he thinks about it, a shudder runs through him. The lady snaps the guy out of his thoughts and asks if he's trying to say that chivalry is in decline, to which he replies that yes, and he can't bring himself to call these people knights. Yulia says it's still good that they've taken up these lands. The guy claims that evil people are everywhere there, and the main character thinks she now understands why Cyril chose this territory. The guy said that if Her Majesty wants to eradicate this disease, then the most suitable place is the former kingdom of Nasran. The girl thinks it's entirely to be expected, since he was so angry when he spoke, and that what's really going on there is even worse than she imagined. None of them could have imagined it, and it was a shock to everyone. They wonder how common such hotbeds of corruption are. The Baron did everything he could to tarnish the honor of the nobility, but he never executed the rebels because word would have spread in the capital, and the girl thought how treacherous he was. They suppressed and rendered helpless the people to destroy their morale. The girl also thinks it's a good thing someone named Simas Dario wrote the petition. Meanwhile, the brunette points out that the knights weren't paid for their work, so many are in debt to the lord. The girl adds that because of this, interest accrues on money that doesn't exist, and the guys respond that this is true. They say that when people try to rebel, the knights don't allow it. Their main character says that in exchange, they'll lower their debt a little, to which the guy replies that it's true, and the main character sighs and realizes it's not just about the losses. The nobles here are very mean. The protagonist understands that money laundering, human trafficking, and forced labor are all the work of the nobility. Even the data Cyril sent her through Felix that evening shows that this land has become a plaything for the corrupt nobles and the future floor. All the nobles of these lands will be in dispute, so now is the perfect time to see them. The lady also tells the brunette to find this Dario and tell him to come to the Baron's castle tomorrow when the ball is in full swing. Justo agrees. The protagonist realizes she's now ready to end this dirty deed. A short time later, preparations for the ball are in full swing, and the protagonist realizes they've been running around like this for 10 minutes, even though the ball hasn't even started yet. The girl understands that, of course, something is already happening there, but she does not want to participate in it. In the novel, Yulia only prepared for the ball when she was young. Instead of having fun, she danced with a ball on the battlefield, so she didn't care about the preparation. The girl realizes it's best to rest, but at the same time, she turns to Her Majesty. The protagonist realizes that, of course, she didn't expect to prepare so thoroughly for this. After which she says the ball isn't until this evening, and maybe there's no need to rush. But Felix, upset, asks what Her Majesty is talking about, since they can't do that. He says that they are not there today for the ball, hey. The guy says that he does not want to admit it, but Her Majesty has not appeared in public for a long time, and the fact that today is an important matter does not change anything. After which, the guy uses magic to create an entire wardrobe in the room. He also says that Flenna would have done it better, but as her assistant, he was trained in atoms. The main character asks Felix what he's doing, and the guy picks up a comb and tells the lady to entrust it to him. While he's combing his mistress's hair, he says that while the Empress is beautiful without it, he hasn't forgotten her grace on the battlefield. She should incorporate not only her appearance, but also her weapons into her image. Yulia understands that many rumors circulate on the battlefield about Yulia's beauty. The girl also realized that, thanks to this, a day when she should have been resting was spent preparing for the ball. Usually, in the imperial palace, Flenna and the other maids did this. Truth be told, she never imagined Felix could do something like this, but still. When the main character looks at herself in the mirror, she realizes that the guy's abilities exceed all her expectations. Hey, the guy says it looks great on her, mistress. When the main character turns to the window, she wonders if it's a carriage, and the guy says it has Envid's coat of arms. Julia, that means the Count has arrived. The girl realizes that today he will be punished most severely, and in some ways, he's worse than Baron Shet. Everything he does is terrible, and he can't even control his vassals. The man has committed countless dirty deeds to maintain his position, from such trivial acts as holding a ball on the same day as Baron Shet, to kidnapping and putting people into eternal sleep. The protagonist sighs after this, realizing that even though Baron Shet knew this, he did nothing. Felix, meanwhile, addresses Her Majesty and says that if anyone tries to harm her, he will not stand by and watch. He also says that the ladies know he was kind and asks if that's true. The heroine realizes that's definitely not what he says with such a sweet face, and she initially thought she wouldn't have to be on her head all day. Then the lady says to the courthouse steps, he was kind and sincere the whole time. The guy immediately thanks the lady, and the main character asks if he understands what will happen at today's ball, to which the guy replies, yes. Then the main character says he knows when to intervene, and the young man replies that, of course, after all, the lady tried so hard to get them there. Julia says that she believes in him so the guy can act at his own discretion. The girl realizes she's still nervous, but it seems there's no reason for it. Felix only smiles in response, but at the same time, someone else is knocking on the door. Just then, Justo enters the room. A short time later, he's already accompanying the main character, and she wonders if there's any gloating in him. Brad simply asks what the lady is talking about. The main character then recalls how the guy entered the room. He then approached the lady and asked her to let him help her put on the jewelry. The main character said no, but Justo took the jewelry from the box Felix was holding, then approached the lady and put it on. Felix looked a little disappointed, and the main character understands that he's only 17, so he'll grow up soon and understand everything. She also wondered if she should cheer him up. The main character realizes that she truly feels sorry for Felix. But for today's ball, physique was more important than magical ability, and of course, Felix didn't like it, but he had to accept it. Justo, a duke, would handle these nobles better. The girl realizes she doesn't know much about Felix, as in the novella he was described as a calm young man. But after this, it's no wonder Felix is hostile to Justo. Moreover, Felix couldn't accept the fact that Justo had been slowly losing faith in Julia for the past 2 years. He considers Julia his sole master, and there have been other situations that have fueled hostility within Felix. Even the time spent with Julia is a high priority. So now the girl takes the brunette's arm and tells him he shouldn't be so mean to Felix. After all, he's still young, so Julia asks why he did it, but he doesn't answer, saying he doesn't understand what they're talking about. The main character realizes that if Felix heard them, he would be even more upset, and the brunette thinks he has no right to speak. The protagonist realizes that it wasn't just Felix who Julia didn't consider as a partner. She treated everyone solely as colleagues. Afterward, the lady approaches the hall, and when the door opens, a servant from the same room announces that the ruler of the empire, Her Majesty Julia, has arrived. When the main character enters the room, she realizes this isn't the encounter she expected. The aristocrats immediately bow and greet the empress. One of the men wonders if perfection exists, and if so, isn't this what she looks like? His eyes can't believe what he sees. The other lady realizes the empress is incredibly beautiful. The man then wonders why no one ever spoke of her beauty, and the woman realizes she's nothing like Baronchet described. The main character understands that their vile faces show how stereotypes are being destroyed, and at first, she tried to seem friendly. But you only need to look at these people, and it seems that the most obvious outcome is to beat everyone present with particular cruelty. The protagonist looks at her colleagues and realizes they can't seem to even focus on the purpose of their visit. In truth, she just wants to let them get on with their work. Then the main character starts using her aura and claims she didn't allow them to raise their heads, so how dare they look her in the eyes? They immediately get scared, and the girl claims she hates repeating the same thing twice. After which they bow and wonder what the empress is talking about. Although if you think about it, what sent the Duke of Fez into eternal sleep? They also turn defensively and realize that he did say he just needed to flatter her a little, but the atmosphere there is so frightening. The lady realizes she's played the evil empress and now needs to play the good one. The girl asks why they're so afraid, then tells them to look up, because she was just joking and wanted to cheer everyone up. They didn't think she was so scary. After which the aristocrats look up in confusion, and the girl wonders if they're really scared. She thought it was a good joke. One of them realizes the lady is trying to attract attention, and the empress might be a beast too. She twists them like toys. But any beast can be tamed, and one of the aristocrats understands that they will have fame and fortune if they only get close to the empress. And if you think about it, she is very good. Overall, the ball went beautifully. The empress danced first with Justo, but she declined offers from others. When one of the nobles offered a lady a dance, the girl insisted she too had eyes. Afterwards, she asked him to tell her the color of her eyes, and the man insisted that her eyes were the most beautiful he'd ever seen. Julia realized this was all similar to how, in a past life, she'd made a really bad figurine. The girl sighs and realizes that Julia is simply drinking and having fun at the ball, but at the same time, she's making everyone around her nervous and worried. The main character realizes that it's certainly beautiful, but it smells like dog shit. At that moment, the girl wonders if she really said that word. Manager Lee always joked like that to cheer up the staff, and no matter how sad or dejected she was, she always laughed. When things go wrong, jokes help keep you in check and avoid getting upset. But when the manager turned to the lady and told her to smile, it was a relief. The girl was smiling, but her thoughts were filled with disgust. A little while later, the lady went out onto the balcony, and at that very moment, someone came in and said he must have been late with his greeting. The main character turns around and asks who he is, and the man replies that he is Count Edvind and one of the managers there. Yulia asks if that's really true, then says she seems to remember, and that he was the one who ignored her arrival. The man immediately apologizes, and the girl says she thought he'd been busy lately. People realize she recognized him, of course, since Baron Shet had been deliberately keeping him out of the picture, and the girl wonders what he really wants from her. It turns out that her subordinates enjoyed bothering her, even at the expense of humiliating themselves, and they lose their pride too easily. The man immediately tells Her Majesty that this is a misunderstanding. The main character asks him what he's talking about, thinking she's wondering if there's a commandment for those who act immorally. The man immediately asks how he could come to her empty-handed, but the main character, looking at his hands, says that's why he came. The Count at the same moment says that, to be honest, he has prepared a lot for Her Majesty. Their main character menacingly asks if that is really why he came only now, to which the man replies that they did not answer at all. They invited many interesting people to their castle who should please her. This only makes Yulia angry and realizes this guy is a real talker. Meanwhile, the girl notices another person near the balcony, after which she realizes he's arrived. Yulia also asks if the Count talks about interesting people, to which he replies that he does. The main character places her hand on his shoulder and then examines him, squeezing, causing the man to bend over. Julia turns to Count Edvind again. The Baron is in the hall at this time, but he's wondering where the knights are and where all the idiots have gone. He also wonders if they can't catch one bastard, after which they even talked about grabbing this guy quickly. He also cries out why everyone is standing there like statues and whether they're really thinking of rebelling. At that very moment, the main character enters the room and says how noisy it is there, and the man realizes that it is the Empress's voice. The girl asks what all the fuss is about, and her interlocutor notes that it's nothing special, because the thing is that he didn't tell her about it last time. He also says that the residents have become completely arrogant, having forgotten about their benefactor and the main game, which is quite possible, does not say the state. But at that very moment, one of them tells Her Majesty that this is untrue and a brazen slander, as they are not at all arrogant. The Baron merely sternly tells him to shut up, and asks what kind of disrespect this is for Her Majesty. The man says they'll grab this guy right now, and it's his fault the lady had to witness this. But Yulia asks why grab him. She also says that he himself said that people have gone wild, and she would like to hear what this guy himself has to tell her. The Baron asks Her Majesty why all this trouble, and the girl wonders if they are not insulting her dear defense. And in that case, she should personally come up with a punishment, and this is an excellent idea. The girl also says that she does not want to become a tyrant, that she judges after listening to only one side, and besides, lying to the Empress is a much greater sin. The lady heads to the throne, and the Baron understands that with the news of the Empress's visit, all the calculations have been put in order, and in this case, the Empress might believe him. A little while later, the boy claims that his father was unable to pay even the interest on the grain he borrowed, and they had no other choice, so he hopes for Her Majesty's sense of justice. After this, the girl asks him to tell her what he wanted to tell her, but he says that there is no point in listening to this guy because it is a completely trivial matter. But at that very moment, the main character launches an aura at him and it flies past the Baron, causing him to freeze. At this point, the girl says that she hates arrogant people and wonders if he is really itching to add something. The man remains silent after this and understands that this guy has no evidence anyway, and no matter how hard he tries, everything has already been swept up in the ledger again. After this, the main character says that she thinks he is going a little overboard, and the Baron asks if Her Majesty really suspects him. The woman says that if his words are true, she'll have no choice but to let all the poor people suffer. The The Baron immediately replies that this is completely wrong and his words are unproven. Yulia asks if there is really no evidence, and the man replies and asks who will follow the rules if they take his word for it. The protagonist then turns to the Baron and asks why. Even though he's perfectly aware of the situation, he's acting this way. He knows that, according to imperial law, he can raise prices by a maximum of 30%. The man at this point wonders if the lady really believes everything the guy told her. His conscience is clear, after all. Yulia says that in words, everyone is an angel. You're asking if that's true. The man asks if at least a ledger will make her believe him. But the main character then extends her hand and asks if he's really talking about that ledger. Felix immediately hands the lady a stack of papers. The Baron wonders why the ledger is there, then decides it doesn't matter because they fixed everything anyway, so there won't be any problems. Meanwhile, the Baron tells the lady to check it herself, and then she'll realize that everything this guy said was a lie. The main character tells Felix to use magic, and the guy does so. And the Baron, watching this, thinks whether he really possesses such magic. But if everything goes like this, it will be very bad. Meanwhile, the main character looks at the reports and asks the Baron if he can tell her where it is again. The man asks Her Majesty to wait, as there's clearly some kind of error. But the main character only sighs and then turns to Felix, and the guy hands her a few more papers. He says that this simply can't be true, and how base it is. The main character, with a smile on her face, asks if he's talking about baseness. He wonders if he is really all white and fluffy. But she even warned him out of the kindness of her heart that lying to the Empress is a grave sin. And if he lied to her, then it's worth first depriving him of his tongue, or maybe getting rid of his hand. Since he forged official documents, these hands are now useless, and the girl asks the Baron if this is not true. The man immediately falls to the floor and asks Her Majesty to pardon him, but the girl asks if he is really talking about such a thing, and if she said even a word about execution.